The Continental War was a nightmare that lasted for 100 years, tearing the land apart. But near the end, a man emerged from the shadows to finish it, the legendary Riot Belger who fought with magical artifacts. He wasn't just a soldier, he was a human weapon who slaughtered tens of thousands. Even monsters with disaster-level power couldn't stand against him. He used blue energy constructs and chains to lock down the battlefield. He cut down the monsters and the humans who dared to control them. Following his country's orders, he wiped out anyone who turned a blade toward him. But once the war ended, he just vanished and no one has seen him since. Present day, Riot is living a quiet life as a shopkeeper when someone calls out to him. It's his grandson, Ray. The kid is itching to learn swordsmanship and wants some tips on how to train. Riot just laughs it off, calling fighting something for barbarians, and tells him to go sweep the yard instead. Ray isn't having it. He knows his grandpa used to be a warrior. But Riot insists those days are long gone, claiming he'd probably struggle just to lift a sword now. Ray just grins and teases him for being out of shape, which gets under the old man's skin. The kid stretches out, mentioning he wants to use the yard work as prep for the academy exam. He won't say exactly why he's so motivated, it's a secret for now, but he's clearly excited. Riot watches him head out, likely feeling every bit of his old age. He realizes Ray is already growing up so fast. Alone in the shop, his expression softens. He just wants to stay alive long enough to see what that secret is. His mind drifts back to the war, back when Ray was just a newborn. Back then, he was a killing machine with a simple mission: eliminate the enemy. He followed those orders to the letter, leaving a trail of blood in his wake. He didn't hesitate or feel anything, he just killed. All those years spent fighting for a country that didn't care about him. It turned him into a weapon without blood or tears. But that lack of emotion cost him the family he loved. He watches a photo of them burn in the flames. His home was reduced to ash and fire. His daughter and her husband were left dead on the ground. The rage was consuming. He swore he'd find the culprit and wipe out their entire bloodline. But then he heard it, a cry coming from the wreckage. He found a baby lying in the ruins. His name was Ray. Riot looked down at the tiny, screaming life in his arms. In the middle of all that death, there was still something left to save. As he held him, the baby reached out and touched his face. Little Ray smiled, and for the first time in a long time, the warrior's heart broke. That baby became the only light left in his world. Back in the present, he vows to protect the life his daughter left behind, no matter the cost. He walks over to a heavy door secured with chains and a massive padlock. He fits the key into the lock, his hands steady. He stares down into the dark basement, ready to break a taboo he's kept buried for years. Something sits in the corner, hidden under a dusty cloth. He pulls back the cover to reveal a lifelike doll, the vessel for his old self. Riot stares at the face of the doll, a younger reflection of himself. He knows his current body is failing him. He clutches his chest as his heart flares up. Time is running out faster than he'd like to admit. He looks back at Ray, the boy he's sworn to protect. If he uses this doll, his life will never be the same again. Suddenly, a voice from the doorway cuts through the basement's silence. Someone's entered the shop. Riot heads upstairs to greet the customer, trying to play the part of a normal old shopkeeper. He asks what kind of artifact they're after. The visitor doesn't mince words. He's looking for a mythic item, the stuff of legends. Riot's heart drops. This isn't just some random collector off the street. The stranger strikes with blinding speed, revealing he knows exactly who he's talking to, the legendary Riot Belger. The masked thief draws a blade, his eyes gleaming with greed. He's come for the assassin doll's greatest creations. He lunges forward, a blur of purple and sharpened steel. He's not just here to talk, he's here to take everything Riot has left. But Riot isn't defenseless. A massive surge of blue mana erupts from his palm. The thief is impressed. Even as an old man, the legend still has some fight left in him. Riot manifests a glowing barrier out of thin air. He's still the master of artifact creation. He summons the sacred shield, Aegis, a relic capable of nullifying almost any attack. Behind the shield, Riot's eyes go cold. He wants to know who leaked the secret of his mythic items. The thief just laughs it off. Fear isn't in his vocabulary today. He claims he's just a hired hand, but he swings his dagger with professional precision. Riot isn't in the mood for games. He activates his skill once more. A powerful shockwave of energy blasts through the entire room. The force of it sends the thief crashing through the walls and out of the building. The dust begins to settle as the intruder tries to regain his footing outside. Riot steps out into the night, now wielding the legendary holy sword Excalibur. The sword amplifies his mana, and he grips the hilt tight, his aura overwhelming the area. He stands tall, the weight of the massive blade doing nothing to slow him down. He demands to know one thing: who exactly sent a thief to his doorstep? The thief admits the pressure is exactly what he'd expect from a hero, but he's not done yet. He moves like a shadow, taunting Riot about the inevitable weakness of his aging body. A stray spark catches Riot off guard, and he winces as his heart begins to flare up again. Just then, Ray walks in, completely unaware of the danger. He calls out for his grandpa. Riot panics, shouting for the boy to stay back. This was the last thing he wanted. The thief sees an opportunity, and his smile turns predatory. Before Riot can react, the thief has grabbed Ray from behind, using the boy as a human shield. He pulls out another mythic item, a bell called Echoes of Memory. Riot's blood runs cold. He knows exactly what that artifact is capable of. The thief rings the bell and the light fades from Ray's eyes. He's a blank slate now. Ray's hand reaches out for a weapon, his movements stiff and mechanical. He picks up a sword, his gaze hollow and red. The thief laughs, mocking the old man's helplessness. Without a second's hesitation, Ray lunges at his own grandfather. Riot barely manages to block the strike, his heart breaking as he looks at his grandson's empty expression. He realizes the bell has rewritten Ray's memories, turning him into a puppet. Now he's stuck in a nightmare. To save Ray, he has to find a way to break the spell without hurting the boy. Riot knows there are only two ways to break the brainwashing: defeat the caster or deliver a physical shock to the victim's brain. He grits his teeth, realizing he has no choice but to use force against his own flesh and blood. With a heavy heart, Riot channels a burst of mana and strikes out at the boy. He connects with a powerful blow, desperately apologizing as he tries to jar Ray's mind back to reality. The energy crackles around Ray, whose blank expression begins to waver under the assault. A massive explosion of light erupts as Riot pours his remaining strength into the technique. As the dust settles, the masked thief scoffs at the old man's supposed lack of mercy for his family. Riot glares back through the smoke, his gaze cold and unwavering. He knows exactly how much force was needed. The thief's smug expression vanishes as he feels a sudden shift in the atmosphere. A colossal pillar of light tears through the sky, signaling the arrival of something far more dangerous. A voice echoes from the brilliance, mocking the failure of a mere underling. The client steps out of the light, a towering figure with an aura that dwarfs everyone present. Riot is paralyzed with dread. The masked thief looks on in awe as the man he works for finally makes his entrance. Riot struggles to process the sheer weight of the presence before him. He's never felt anything like this. It's an overwhelming, suffocating pressure that threatens to crush his spirit. Without a word, the client draws his massive broadsword and swings, forcing Riot to move on pure instinct. The strain is too much for Riot's aging heart, which begins to stutter and fail under the pressure. He clutches his chest in agony, cursing the timing of his failing body. The client's blade descends with the force of a falling mountain. His golden eyes remain cold and detached, as if he's merely performing a chore. Riot manages to block the strike with Excalibur, but the shockwave ripples through his entire being. His legs buckle as he's driven into the dirt. He realizes that even with his legendary skills, his old body has reached its limit. He roars a final defiance, claiming that while his body is old, his spirit and skills remain as sharp as ever. But the physical toll is undeniable, and blood splatters onto the cold ground. Riot's vision begins to blur, the world spinning as his strength leaves him. He tries to focus, but the client is already preparing another move. Suddenly, a blade pierces through Riot's chest from behind. He looks back in absolute horror to see Ray standing there, his eyes still glowing with a faint, malevolent red. But the light in Ray's eyes suddenly flickers and dies out as the bell's influence finally breaks. The boy blinks, his expression shifting from a vacant stare to one of utter confusion. He sees his grandfather bleeding out on the ground and calls out to him, his voice trembling. He looks down at the blood on his hands and the sword, his mind struggling to comprehend what just happened. Before he can react, a massive shockwave from the client's power tears through the area. A swirling vortex of dark energy consumes the battlefield. The ground shatters as a final, devastating explosion levels the shop and everything around it. Riot is tossed aside like a rag doll, groaning in pain as he hits the wreckage. Ray pushes himself up, desperately searching for the man who raised him. A dark silhouette looms over him, the client standing tall amidst the ruins. Riot lies defeated in the rubble, his body broken and unable to move. He sees the monster approaching his grandson and begs Ray to stay away, his voice barely a whisper. But Ray finds a new source of strength and stands his ground, shielding his grandfather. He draws his sword and glares at the client, declaring that he won't hold back if the stranger takes another step. Riot's voice cracks as he screams for Ray to stop. He knows the boy is no match for the monster before them and begs him to run while he still can. Ray's eyes are fixed on the enemy, filled with a desperate courage, while the client stares back with a gaze as cold as death. The client takes a heavy, deliberate step forward, the sound of his armored boot echoing like a death knell in the wreckage of the shop. A cruel smirk plays on the client's lips as he prepares to end the bloodline of the man who was once a legend. With a terrifying display of speed and power, the client unleashes a strike that shatters the air around them. Riot's scream of "N-O-O-O" is lost in the roar of the impact as he watches the boy he loves more than life itself bear the brunt of the attack. The client's massive blade cuts through the air, followed by a sickening spray of blood as Ray is struck down. Time seems to slow for Riot as he watches the silhouette of his grandson's falling body reflected in his own wide, tear-filled eye. Ray's eyes go dull as he falls, the spark of life fading from him in an instant. Riot's face contorts in pure, unadulterated agony. The pain in his chest is no longer from his heart failing, but from the soul-crushing despair of losing his only reason for living. Blood rains down across the battlefield, painting the ruins in a horrific shade of crimson. The client stands amidst the carnage, looking down at the two bodies with complete indifference. He coldly reminds the masked thief of his orders to leave no evidence behind. Riot, clinging to the last threads of his life, reaches a trembling hand toward the boy he failed to protect. His strength fails him, his hand falling back into the pool of his own blood as he whispers his grandson's name one last time. The client turns to leave, his heavy boots crunching through the debris as if he hadn't just destroyed a family. He casts one last look over his shoulder, acknowledging that while Riot Belger was once the strongest in the world, those days are long gone. But that's no longer true, he mutters, sheathing his weapon as he disappears into the smoke and shadows. The world fades into a violent, blood-red darkness as Riot's consciousness begins to slip away. In the infinite void of his dying mind, a tiny blue spark flickers into existence, fueled by a single, burning emotion. Riot's spirit falls to its knees, wreathed in blue flames of grief. The realization that his own choices led to Ray's death tears at his very core. Memories of the past flood his mind. The day he first held Ray, the child who had pulled him back from the brink of despair after the war. He remembers the laughter, the training, and the simple joy of watching that child grow into a man. He sees Ray's smiling face one last time, a vision of the future that has been cruelly stolen from them both. The grief in Riot's heart transforms into a white-hot, inextinguishable rage. He makes a final, blood-soaked oath. He will return, and he will have his revenge. A system alert flashes. The final condition for Riot's awakening skill is finally met. Red flames flare up as his mana manipulation limit is finally unlocked. His soul begins transferring into a high-level magical artifact. The white cloth covering the vessel burns away. Riot emerges in a brand new body, the reincarnation doll. He looks ahead with a cold, violet stare. This isn't just a body, it's a mythic item. These items were the ultimate prize for the powerful. Most magical tools only need a bit of mana to activate a specific spell. But these forbidden ones were made by a genius artificer, Riot Belger. They were tools capable of warping the world itself. Like a pipe that granted visions of the future, or wings that could jump through the fabric of space. There was even a key designed to unlock hearts and reveal every secret, and a tuner that could twist a person's emotions at will. But most of these artifacts vanished the day Riot went into hiding. Back in the burning shop, the masked thief sifts through the rubble. He's complaining about the mess, annoyed that he has to clean up after such a flashy entrance. He grabs a small treasure, thinking he needs to make the job worth his time. He doesn't notice the doll standing right behind him, glowing with red energy. Riot built this vessel to protect his grandson's future. Now that future is gone. He triggers his magic tool creation skill. He summons the guillotine cutter, a massive blade meant for execution. The thief catches Riot's reflection in his eye and realizes he's in deep trouble. Riot lunges, telling the man that actions always come with consequences. The thief is paralyzed as the red blade comes down. A violent red slash cuts through the air. Riot promises to teach the man a lesson he won't survive. Smoke drifts over the ruined store as the legendary assassin officially returns. A shovel bites into the earth, carving out a shallow grave. Riot looks down, whispering the name of the grandson he couldn't save. Memories of Ray flood back, the boy always running ahead, full of life. He remembers the simple things, like the kid complaining about his portion at dinner. Or the nights Ray couldn't sleep and came looking for comfort. The boy had a secret dream he was so excited to share, but now he never will. Riot shuts his eyes, trying to block out the silence that replaced that laughter. Standing among a field of fresh graves, he realizes the weight of what's been lost. The face of the man responsible, the one they called the client, is burned into his mind. A cold resolve takes over. He won't stop until that man pays for everything. He turns his attention to the dead attacker, searching for any scrap of information. There's nothing left in the ruins but the tools of the killers. He finds a pendant bearing the mark of the Eugen tribe. He calls upon his magic tool creation skill, light gathering in his palms. He manifests the Stardust Compass, a device designed to track a target's origin. He drops the pendant into the glowing field, letting the magic hunt for its home. The compass projects a map, pinpointing the location of the tribe's hidden base. He's found it the start of his trail. The Eugen tribe wasn't just a group of killers, they were experts at gathering intelligence. They used a forbidden skill to read the souls of the dead and pull out their deepest secrets. Riot arrives at the Valley of Corpses, a desolate fortress shrouded in fog. He walks toward the gates without a hint of hesitation. He knows that after years in hiding, finding his old allies will be impossible. But if these assassins are involved, it means someone is actively digging up his past. If they've been hunting everyone he ever knew to find him, then the trail of corpses leads straight to his new front door. A blade suddenly presses against his throat as a voice tells him to stop. An assassin cloaked in shadows demands to know who he is and how he found this place. More figures emerge from the mist, surrounding him with weapons drawn. Riot doesn't even flinch, asking if they really think he's here to talk. The lead assassin decides he's seen enough and swings for the kill. The blade connects, but instead of cutting flesh, it shatters against Riot's neck. The attacker stares in disbelief as his weapon breaks into pieces. A massive burst of energy erupts from Riot, throwing the nearest killers back. They can't understand how a simple knife couldn't even leave a scratch. Realizing steel won't work, they prepare to blast him with magic instead. A storm of energy hits him head-on, intended to tear him to pieces. But the man just keeps walking right through the flames and the smoke. He steps out of the explosion, casually brushing the dust off his coat. The assassins are frozen in fear, wondering what kind of monster they've just provoked. Riot's voice is low as he mentions their habit of searching the dead for memories. He looks them in the eye and asks just how many lives they threw away to find him. The assassin trembles, demanding to know who Riot really is. Riot tells him to shut up, his eyes glowing with power as he activates a skill. A massive mechanical structure, an iron maiden, manifests from thin air. He stares the man down, telling him the only thing he's allowed to do now is scream. The assassin begs for mercy as the heavy iron doors begin to close. Blood splatters across the surface as the maiden does its grim work. Dozens of the iron traps now line the path, each one holding a silent victim. A lone survivor groans in the shadows, his face pale with shock. He looks around at the remains of his tribe, unable to believe everyone is gone. Riot confirms the truth, standing calmly over the destruction. The survivor stammers, asking what exactly this monster wants from him. A glowing dagger appears in Riot's hand as he tells the man he just needs information. He presses the blade to the assassin's neck and asks for the location of the client. He drags the man back to a dark cellar for a more thorough interrogation. But as he expected, the low-level grunt doesn't know anything useful. He leaves the body behind and begins searching the rest of the base, eventually finding a stack of client records. He notices something immediately. Entire pages have been carefully ripped out. The man he's hunting is clearly more cautious than he anticipated. Riot recalls the words of the man who killed Ray, taunting him about his past strength. It had to be someone who knew him during the war, but that list is long. He shakes his head, knowing it's too early to jump to any conclusions. He pulls a specific file from the pile, a new plan forming. He knows exactly where he needs to go next. The file points toward a man he hasn't seen in years. Rit Brown, an old comrade who might have the connections he needs. If anyone can help him track down a high-level client, it's him. He realizes that in this world of shadows, Rit is the only person he can still trust. The journey takes him to the royal capital of Gloria, a city teeming with life and secrets. Riot stands outside a grand estate, watching the leaves fall. He walks toward the front door, his expression unreadable. He pushes the door open and steps inside the quiet mansion. He enters a room filled with books and personal mementos, looking for any sign of his friend. He stops in front of a framed photograph on a desk. He notices a child in the photo and begins to wonder how much time has truly passed. A sudden movement behind him catches his eye, and he turns just in time. A powerful strike comes flying at his head, sending papers scattering. Rit Brown demands to know who he is and why he's in his house. The merchant glares at him, asking how he could possibly have that face. Riot just sighs, telling him that's a hell of a greeting after all this time. He jokes that since they're old friends, Rit should at least offer him a hug. Rit isn't in the mood for jokes and activates his mighty arm skill. He lunges forward, his arms glowing with immense magical power. A window shatters as Riot makes a sudden entrance into the estate, the sound of breaking glass echoing through the silent hall. Rit Brown lunges forward with a powerful strike, his face twisted in a mix of rage and confusion at the intruder. Riot remains perfectly calm, casually asking his old friend why he's trying to punch him. Rit screams at him to shut up, refusing to believe the young man before him could possibly be the person he claims to be. Riot sighs inwardly, realizing that his rejuvenated appearance is causing a genuine and dangerous misunderstanding. A flurry of rapid attacks follows, but Riot moves like a shadow, easily staying one step ahead of the merchant's strikes. Rit is momentarily stunned by the fluid, familiar movements, a flicker of uneasy recognition crossing his mind. Riot's boots slide across the floor as he repositions himself with the practiced ease of a veteran warrior. He tells Rit once more that it really is him, but the merchant is still too blinded by shock to listen. Rit demands that he stop screwing around, his attacks becoming even more frantic and desperate. With a sharp, decisive movement, Riot delivers a kick that sends Rit flying back against the wall with a heavy thud. The merchant gasps for air, the sheer power and precision of the blow leaving him momentarily paralyzed. Riot looks down at his fallen comrade, wondering if he might have overdone it just a little bit. Outside the Grand Manor, the sun shines peacefully, a stark contrast to the brief, violent confrontation within. Rit Brown, Riot's former comrade-in-arms, rubs his aching head as the impossible truth finally begins to sink in. Sitting comfortably with a hot cup of tea, Riot expresses his disappointment that his old friend didn't recognize him immediately. Rit shouts in frustration, pointing out that normal people don't exactly grow younger as the years go by. He stares at Riot, utterly baffled by how the man seems even stronger now than he was during his prime. Riot explains that his new form is the result of a magic tool, something an old guerrilla soldier should be able to grasp. Rit sighs, admitting that he hasn't been an active soldier for a very long time now. He gazes away, reflecting on how much the world has changed since the war ended while Riot was away in hiding. While Riot was gone, the people stopped fighting and turned their energy toward rebuilding everything they had lost. In this new era of peace, everyone has become obsessed with improving their own lives and finding personal happiness. Rit explains that he's built a successful life as a wealthy merchant in the royal capital, blessed with a family and children. The two old friends sit together in the quiet room, the tension finally starting to dissipate as they share tea. Rit looks at Riot's youthful face, asking what he's truly trying to achieve by returning looking exactly like he did years ago. Riot's expression turns somber, the weight of his hidden grief finally showing through his young facade. He reveals that in his long life, he had even reached the point of having a grandchild. He asks Rit if he's willing to hear out the long and tragic story of why he has come seeking help. The room is filled with artifacts of the past, but the conversation is firmly rooted in the dark reality of the present. Rit listens in silence, his gaze fixed on his cup as Riot recounts the events that led to his transformation. After hearing the full tale, the merchant sighs, acknowledging that Riot has truly been through a great deal. Riot explains that he found Rit's name on the Spirit Clan's client list, which is how he tracked him down. Rit breaks into a cold sweat, shocked that those dangerous people from the underworld actually kept such a list. Riot admits he was surprised to see his old friend's name, as he never thought Rit would be making use of such people. Rit defends himself, explaining that there are all kinds of business in the merchant world that require questionable connections. Riot clenches his fist, the intensity of his resolve radiating from his small form. A dark, vengeful aura surrounds him as he declares his singular purpose, revenge for his fallen family. Rit looks at him with a mix of concern and skepticism, questioning if a bloody path of vengeance is what Ray would have truly wanted. Riot gives a cold, knowing smile, nodding that no one can ever truly know the wishes of the dead. He stares at his own reflection in the tea, firm in his belief that those who commit such wrongs must pay the ultimate price. He leans back, his eyes cold and focused as he states that this isn't just about Ray anymore. It's about justice. Riot reflects on a set of stolen mythic items, powerful relics that hold the potential for immense destruction. If such items are abused by the wrong hands, the consequences for the world would be catastrophic. The world itself could be reshaped with terrifying ease, plunging it back into the darkness of war and chaos. Riot clenches his fist, his gaze hard and determined. He knows that the person behind this must be stopped at all costs. Rit listens with a grim expression, finally understanding the weight of the burden Riot has taken upon himself. Riot tells him that his reason for visiting was to ask for a favor, one that only an old friend can fulfill. Riot gives a faint, appreciative smirk, glad that Rit is still as quick to understand as he was in their younger days. He hands over a piece of paper, telling Rit that he needs everything written on it to be gathered as soon as possible. To stand a chance against their common enemy, Riot reveals his plan to create an entirely new kind of magic tool. Rit accepts the task without hesitation, knowing that the materials on that list are essential for what's to come. Riot adds that there is one more thing he needs, information that only someone connected to the underworld would know. He reminds Rit that he's been familiar with the shadow world since their active military days, so he must have the answer. Riot leans forward and asks the crucial question. How does one gain entry to the mysterious Round Table of Ruin? Rit explains that the Kubrick Library is the center of the Dark Guild, where all the most dangerous information from the underworld is gathered. To the public, the Grand Library is known only as a sanctuary of knowledge, with the largest collection of books in the royal capital. However, the vast halls and endless shelves are merely a public face for something far more sinister hidden within. Riot arrives at the library and begins his search, his gloved hand reaching for a specific volume on one of the high shelves. The library's true purpose is to act as a perfect camouflage for the literal and metaphorical darkness that spreads beneath its floors. By moving the books in the exact correct sequence, a secret mechanism is triggered, revealing the path to the underworld. With a low, grinding sound, a hidden door opens, beckoning Riot to descend into the darkness below. Riot descends a long, winding stone staircase, each step taking him further away from the peaceful city above. He steps out into a massive underground chamber, the scale of the operation finally becoming clear to him. He has arrived at the Round Table of Ruin, the legendary and dangerous hub for the capital's most notorious dark guild. Suddenly, an assailant lunges from the shadows with a blade, but Riot is already prepared for the inevitable welcome. A massive mace swings down, but Riot catches it barehanded without breaking a sweat. He looks at the weapon with a cold gaze, calling out the guild's rough, welcoming committee. The brawler Randall just grins and says that's standard procedure around here. He turns to the girl at the counter, acting like trying to crush a newcomer's skull was just a casual greeting. The receptionist, Mina, just smiles through the chaos and chirps that every job they handle is lethal. She casually mentions that weaklings just end up as expensive bodies to dispose of, so resolve is mandatory. Despite the threat, she asks if he's still interested. Riot doesn't hesitate, this is exactly why he's here. Since he's committed, she moves to the next step, the name he'll be using for his registration. A name, he needs something that won't give him away. Using his old aliases is too risky, they'd lead his enemies straight to him. He needs something that represents his hunt, something perfect for the revenge he's planned. He looks down, his mind made up. He knows exactly what to call himself now. He tells her to register him as Ray, taking on the name of the grandson he lost. Mina accepts it with a cheerful nod, calling him Lord Ray, and tells him it's time for the exam. Riot's focus shifts, a registration exam. Mina leads the way, promising to give him the rundown as they go. They head down into the dark, torchlit lower levels of the guild, with Randall following close behind. She explains the hierarchy, showing a ranking system from S all the way down to F. Riot realizes the exam isn't just a formality. It's a filter to make sure only the most capable assassins survive. Mina laughs it off, saying they're a business after all, and they can't afford to hire people who are only half-hearted. Riot finds it tragic that even in a time of supposed peace, a place built on risking lives still thrives. Randall pipes up from behind, asking if the newcomer is actually serious about going through with it. He admits the pay is great, no matter how dirty or illegal the work gets. And if he picks the right contracts, he can satisfy any bloodlust he wants. One guy is already losing it, laughing as his skin crawls with excitement for the slaughter. Mina welcomes the group of bloodthirsty candidates, while Riot Belger stands by with a completely blank expression. The candidates are led to the edge of a massive drop-off. Welcome to the Witchcraft Pit, a massive circular subterranean arena. With a cheerful smile, Mina points out the floating stone steps leading down into the dark. Riot Belger stares into the abyss, waiting for the real test to start. They land at the bottom, the heavy thud of their feet echoing through the chamber. From the safety of the upper level, Mina shouts down, checking if everyone is ready to begin. The crowd is already restless, with guys screaming to get the killing started already. Riot Belger just sighs, these people are way too impatient. Mina's tone stays playful as she tells everyone to take a look beneath their feet. The floor starts to vibrate, and everyone looks down in confusion. A bright line of light cuts right through the center of the arena floor. The ground splits apart, revealing a massive pool of molten lava churning below them. The heat is instant and suffocating, making everyone realize just how bad this situation is. Mina explains the rules. The floor is going to keep retracting until it's tucked away into the walls. Riot Belger looks up and notices a series of thick chains hanging from the distant ceiling. The goal is simple. Whoever is still alive when the floor is gone passes. She gives them a little wave and tells them all to do their best. One candidate realizes the problem. Those chains are way too high for a normal jump. But one guy thinks he's got it in the bag. He activates a skill called aerial promenade, literally walking on air toward the ceiling. The others are pissed, watching him try to get a head start on the safety of the chains. He laughs as he reaches out his hand for the cold metal. But someone else has other plans. A guy in a bandana smirks, refusing to let anyone pass so easily. He triggers his own skill, vector change. The air warps around the climber, completely shifting his momentum. He's yanked sideways, his eyes wide as he loses his grip and plummets. He screams once before the lava swallows him whole. The bandana guy just laughs, mocking the guy for thinking he could save himself alone. Chaos breaks out immediately as the floor continues to shrink. Reincarnated is thriving in the madness, shouting that just surviving would be boring as hell. He goes on a rampage, tearing through the other candidates with a manic grin. Riot Belger watches the slaughter, keeping his distance. It's clear now, this registration exam was designed to be a death match from the very start. Around him, the sounds of metal clashing and men screaming fill the air. Riot Belger stares at the carnage, wondering if this really is all they've got. Reincarnated spots him and starts charging over, sensing a new target. He tells Riot Belger to stop acting cool and join in on the fun of killing each other. Riot Belger doesn't even move, looking down at the bodies near his feet. He tells Reincarnated not to bother. He says Reincarnated wouldn't last 3 seconds and should focus on actually passing the exam. Riot Belger pointed at the chains and told Reincarnated that slaughtering everyone here was pointless if he couldn't reach safety himself. Reincarnated admits that he has a point. Saying that, the tattooed brute lunges at another candidate. In a completely unexpected move, he hurls the candidate toward the chain. The candidate excitedly reaches out his hand. He manages to grab the chain, but his cheer of victory is cut short. The metal is glowing. It's been superheated by the lava below. He screams in agony as his palms start to sizzle against the searing metal. The pain is too much. He loses his grip and plummets into the inferno. Reincarnated watches the body disappear, shocked that the chains are actually traps. He doesn't stay worried for long, laughing as he figures out a way around the heat. A candidate is caught off guard as someone grabs him from behind. Reincarnated isn't looking for a fight, he's looking for a tool. He lunges for the nearest chain, pulling his victim along. In a display of pure cruelty, Reincarnated uses the other man as a human shield to grip the burning metal. The victim's back is pressed into the white-hot chain, his screams echoing through the pit. Up in the observation room, Mina just giggles, finding the bold move entertaining. Reincarnated thanks the dying man for his sacrifice, with a truly twisted grin. Riot Belger watches the display from the edge, his disgust for the man growing. Reincarnated mocks the kid, telling him to hurry up before there's no ground left to stand on. He laughs, nodding that there aren't any other bodies left for Riot Belger to use as a glove. The protagonist stands over the edge, looking at the candidates already lost to the fire. He repeats the word sacrifices, his voice colder than usual. He tells the warrior that he doesn't need anyone's help to climb. Reincarnated's eyes widen as he's suddenly used as a stepping stone. Riot Belger plants a foot right on Reincarnated's face to launch himself into the air. He grabs the red-hot chain with his bare hand, revealing that his doll body literally cannot feel heat. Far above the carnage, the Cerberus Knights' headquarters plaza is bathed in sunlight. The mood is completely different as citizens gossip about the return of a legendary hero. Knights stand at attention, preparing for a grand arrival. The symbol of justice himself, Lord Haste, makes his appearance. The crowd goes wild as they spot the greatest knight in the kingdom. Confetti fills the air for the man everyone admires. He carries the weight of a nation's expectations in his gaze. Lord Haste remains perfectly stoic, the hero everyone expects him to be. Back in the dark, Riot Belger hangs from the chain, his expression as cold as ever. High above the pit, Gaia and the mysterious lady in black watch the performance. Gaia is impressed, finding the new guy to be quite lively. The lady remains silent, her eyes fixed on the doll below. She notes that while he's efficient, Riot Belger lacks the raw killer instinct of a true assassin. Down below, Reinhold is losing his mind as his face gets crushed under a boot. Riot Belger gives him a mock compliment, thanking him for being such a steady foothold. He kicks off with a spray of blood, leaving the tattooed warrior stunned and broken. Reinhold screams after Riot Belger as the doll walks away from the pit. Mina declares that Riot Belger and Reinhold are the only two candidates who pass the grueling test. Back on solid ground, Mina prepares to process Riot Belger's registration, who confirms he starts at the bottom. The examiner gleefully explains the guild's ranking system. Promotion comes from completing dangerous requests, climbing the ladder from F rank to the prestigious A rank. Riot Belger simplifies the process, but Mina reminds him that even the lowest-tier missions are life-or-death gambles. She vents her frustration about quitters who leave their messes for the guild staff to handle. She highlights the elite at the top, veterans who have survived countless bloodbaths to earn their place. These high-ranking assassins are battle-hardened killers who have seen everything. Reaching the top comes with exclusive privileges, especially for those who hit the legendary S rank. Mina describes the classified reading room, a library containing the world's most guarded secrets. She encourages Riot Belger to aim for the pinnacle where rewards and access are limitless. Riot Belger realizes the library might hold the information he needs about the mysterious Orderer. He wastes no time, asking for the quickest path to the top of the guild. A shrill voice cuts in, suggesting a path paved with corpses. Mina is startled to see Gaia, a high-ranking member of the guild, standing behind them. She recognizes him as an elite assassin, on the verge of being promoted to S rank. Gaia, the top-ranked A-class member, introduces himself with a predatory grin. Riot Belger observes the young man, recognizing him as the current peak of his rank. Gaia is a prodigy, a child soldier who has claimed 10,000 lives since the age of 5. The young ranker taunts Riot Belger, questioning his ambition to reach S rank. With a flash of sharp teeth, Gaia laughs off Riot Belger's chances. He criticizes Riot Belger's performance in the exam, nodding his reluctance to get his hands dirty. Gaia leans in, his yellow eyes burning with a lack of respect for Riot Belger's restraint. He invades Riot Belger's personal space, claiming the doll smells of something unpleasant. Gaia calls it the stench of hypocrisy, mocking Riot Belger's apparent mercy toward others. Riot Belger remains unfazed, letting the accusation hang in the air. Gaia questions the logic of leaving potential enemies alive during a survival test. He dismisses Riot Belger's skill, seeing it as incomplete without the willingness to slaughter. The A-ranker insists that a true assassin must be thorough and leave no one standing. Riot Belger listens in silence, his expression unreadable. Gaia speaks of the guild as a home for monsters who revel in bloodshed and lack any sense of morality. He warns Riot Belger that his naive attitude will ultimately lead to his death. To Gaia's surprise, Riot Belger responds with a soft, dismissive chuckle. Annoyed, the young assassin demands to know what's so amusing about his warning. Riot Belger reaches out, casually placing a hand on the dangerous ranker's shoulder. He thanks Gaia for his kindness in worrying about a stranger's survival. The patronizing tone leaves Gaia stunned and visibly irritated. Riot Belger makes it clear that he has his own agenda and no interest in Gaia's philosophy of violence. As he pulls away, he suggests that his restraint isn't born of mercy, but efficiency. Riot Belger's eyes glow with a chilling blue light as he threatens to decapitate the ranker on the spot. Repulsed by the sudden shift in atmosphere, Gaia recoils, shouting at Riot Belger to keep his distance. Infuriated by the doll's audacity, Gaia scoffs at the idea of an F-ranker posing a threat. Dark energy coils around Gaia's hand as his temper flares at Riot Belger's arrogance. Gaia enters a combat stance, promising to end Riot Belger in less than 10 seconds. Riot Belger remains calm, his hand beginning to glow as he prepares a countermeasure. Suddenly, Randall interjects, refusing to be ignored in the middle of the heated confrontation. The muscular warrior leans in close to Riot Belger, claiming the right to kill him first. Unimpressed by the brute's posturing, Riot Belger advises Randall to step back for his own safety. He delivers a chilling warning that once Randall is dead, there won't even be time for regret. Randall explodes in a fit of rage, his face contorting at the perceived insult from a mere doll. With a roar, Randall lunges forward and seizes Riot Belger by the head with a crushing grip. He brags about his reputation as the hunter-killer, while threatening to pulverize Riot Belger's face. Riot Belger lets out a weary sigh, clearly tired of the brute's predictable aggression. A blinding flash of light erupts between them as Riot Belger activates his true power. The doll invokes his unique skill, magic tool creation, manifesting a lethal web of glowing energy. He summons the iron stakes of pruning, vibrating threads capable of slicing through anything they touch. With cold indifference, Riot Belger reminds his attacker that he was given a fair warning. The invisible threads tighten around Randall, who stares in horror as the trap is sprung. In a gruesome display of precision, the wires slice through the giant as Mina and Gaia watch in shock. Riot Belger stands unmoved, silhouetted against the sudden spray of his opponent's blood. Gaia leaps into the fray, dismissively stepping over the remains of the small fry who was just defeated. The agile ranker closes the distance instantly, his claws extended in a lethal, high-speed strike. Riot Belger analyzes Gaia's movements, acknowledging the impeccable speed of a prospective S-rank. As Gaia's attack nears, Riot Belger begins to manifest a new magic tool from thin air. He notes that Gaia's approach is far too straightforward as he prepares to counter the ranker's blow. Riot manifests his new weapon, the lamenting Scarlet Whip, a tool that scales its speed and power based on how much mana the user pumps into it. Gaia just barely manages to twist his body midair as the glowing links of the whip sweep past his face. He lands and flashes a predatory grin, thinking this fight is going to be a walk in the park. He lunges in for a strike, but Riot casually deploys a blue digital shield that catches the blow without a hitch. The kid grinds his teeth in frustration, clearly not used to someone being able to stop his physical attacks so easily. Energy ripples through the room from the force of the collision, but Riot remains perfectly still and composed. Gaia is starting to sweat as he glares at his opponent, realizing that his usual brute force tactics aren't working. He pours everything into a heavy downward strike, trying to shatter the barrier through sheer animalistic aggression. Riot just stares him down with a cold gaze, admitting that the kid actually has some decent backbone. Gaia laughs it off, bragging that his overwhelming strength is the only thing that matters in a fight. High above on the balcony, the lady in black is watching the duel intently, fascinated by the newcomer's skill with magic tools. The way he moves starts to look familiar to her. There was only one person in history who fought with that kind of precision. Gaia slams his fist into the floor, creating a massive shockwave that cracks the stone tiles. He starts bouncing off the pillars and walls, trying to find a blind spot in Riot's circular defense. Riot tracks him effortlessly, nodding that the boy is actually picking up even more speed. Every single one of Gaia's strikes is met with that same humming blue energy shield. Gaia thinks he's finally spotted an opening and dives in with a manic, toothy grin. He slams a heavy kick right against the barrier, but Riot doesn't even budge an inch. Riot looks at him with a tired expression, telling the boy that he's still way too young for this level of combat. He decides it's time for a lesson, reminding Gaia that there's always someone better out there. The threat just makes Gaia even more excited, his eyes glowing with a feral bloodlust. His hands are actually starting to smoke from the pressure of hitting the mana shield over and over. He's practically vibrating with rage, saying he can't wait to tear the older man apart. Riot just sighs, warning him that an attitude like that is a quick way to die young. Gaia screams for him to shut up and throws another desperate kick at the barrier. He vents about how much he hates people who think they can lecture him mid-fight. He smashes the ground in a blind rage, sending debris flying everywhere as he loses his cool. Riot just glides away from the mess, keeping his defense perfectly centered as he resets his stance. He starts gathering mana in his hand, preparing to end this little skirmish once and for all. A massive explosion of light and force erupts between them, shaking the entire hall. Gaia is still laughing like a maniac through the smoke, completely obsessed with the fight. Riot tells him to stop playing around and finally show his true power. The two clash up close, locked in a struggle of will, but before things go any further, everything stops. A giant mechanical snake looms over them, and a voice from above commands Gaia to stand down. The authority figure makes it clear that the boy has been taking things way too far. Meet Noise Hamon. She's an S-rank holder and holds the number 3 spot in the guild, looking every bit like the powerhouse she is. Gaia isn't backing down, though. He's pissed that she's getting between him and his prey. Noise doesn't even flinch. With a wave of her hand, a massive shadow snake lunges out from the darkness. The construct strikes like lightning, tearing right through Gaia's arm and sending blood flying everywhere. She keeps that calm smile while reminding him to listen when his superiors are talking. Gaia hits the floor screaming. Riot Belger just stands there, realizing exactly how huge the gap in their power really is. But then something insane happens. Gaia's stump starts glowing pink, and his arm begins to stitch itself back together. Even Riot's eyes go wide. Regeneration that fast is practically a myth, even for the strongest warriors. Looking at them, Riot starts to wonder if these two have anything human left in them at all. Noise acts like it's nothing, asking Gaia to put his weapon away if he doesn't want to actually die today. It's clear this woman is on a completely different level, but Riot still got his own eyes on the prize. She starts walking toward him, her heels clicking against the stone floor. She cuts right to the point. She knows he's only after access rights to the library. She offers him a deal. If he agrees to obey her, she'll help him get exactly what he wants. Riot isn't the type to sign a contract he hasn't read. He needs to know what she's actually after. She admits she has her own goals she needs to accomplish. And to make it happen, she needs a pawn she can actually use. She gets right in his space, tilting his head up to get a better look at her new recruit. She needs someone young, strong, and talented, someone exactly like him. It's a tempting offer, but Riot knows a shortcut like this always comes with a heavy price. She doesn't push it, telling him he's completely free to walk away if he wants. With that, she turns around and tells Gaia to come along. The guy hates being ordered around, but he follows anyway. Gaia makes sure to get one last threat in, promising Riot that he'll be the one to kill him next time. Riot just sighs. This whole thing just became a massive headache. But if this is what it takes to reach his target even a second faster, he'll do it. He's ready to clear out any obstacle in his way, no matter how much power they're packing. A week later, Riot is back at the guild reception desk. Mina, the receptionist, looks like she's about to have a heart attack. Riot drops a massive pile of reports on the desk. Every single mission they gave him is done. He calmly explains that he's finished everything on the list. Mina is stunned. This much work would normally take a regular adventurer at least 2 years to pull off. But Riot isn't exactly a normal human anymore. His mechanical doll body doesn't need to sleep, eat, or even take a breather. Because of that, he can operate at dozens of times the efficiency of anyone else. Mina checks the reports and finds them flawless, guaranteeing him a promotion straight to D rank. Riot's already looking for the next step, asking what he needs to do to hit C rank. It turns out he's already got a head start because Noise herself put in a recommendation for him. And along with that recommendation, a direct request has arrived specifically for him. It's an assassination contract targeting a D-rank adventurer. Mina can't believe it. Getting a personal request from Lady Noise is unheard of for a rookie. She explains that Noise is the head of the largest faction in the guild, making her a massive deal. In fact, the last person she personally recruited was Gaia, the top-ranked A-ranker. Noise Hamon doesn't hide her ambitions. She tells Riot she has an objective she needs to hit, and she looks like she's used to getting what she wants. Riot looks over the mission details. He's starting to piece it together. She's rounding up high-tier talent for some kind of massive play. He pulls out a card left for him. It's got a bright purple lipstick mark and the words kiss or bite written in neon letters. The message is a direct threat wrapped in a tease. If you don't want to be bitten, then kiss me. Riot isn't exactly charmed. The scene shifts to the heart of the city, where the massive, cathedral-like adventurer guild stands tall under a clear sky. Inside, the place is a madhouse. Adventurers from every rank are shouting and rubbing shoulders, looking for their next big payday. Riot makes his way through the crowd. He's looking for the meeting spot where his new party is supposed to gather. The registration counters are swamped with people turning in materials and checking the latest notices. He spots a guy who stands out from the rough crowd. Blonde, wearing a pristine military-style uniform and looking way too polished for this place. The blonde man notices him first. He walks over with a smile and asks if he's looking for a guy named Ray. He introduces himself as Alexis Slane, leader of a party called the Wings of Iron. He's a D-rank swordsman with a very rehearsed aura of nobility. Riot sticks to his cover and shakes the man's hand, introducing himself as Ray. He plays the part of the humble rookie, asking Alexis to show him the ropes since he's still pretty new to the scene. Alexis seems thrilled to have him. Apparently, finding anyone with the magic bag skill is like finding a needle in a haystack. Riot keeps the act going, playing off his rare talent as something he's still trying to figure out. On paper, the magic bag skill is incredible. It lets the user tuck away massive amounts of gear into a private pocket dimension. But it's all a lie. Riot actually uses magical tool creation to build a device called the box that just mimics the effect. This rookie porter, Disguise, is his ticket to getting close to his target without raising any red flags. Alexis leads him over to the rest of the group, so he can meet the people he'll be serving as a pack mule. He introduces the cleric, Kalisha Noir, and their scout, a guy named Einbot. Kalisha doesn't say a word. She just stares ahead with empty eyes, looking like she'd rather be anywhere else. Ein is even less welcoming. He scoffs, making it clear he's got zero interest in babysitting some rookie Alexis dragged along. He's only here for the gold. He wants to finish the job, get paid, and never see any of these people again. Alexis tries to be the friendly leader, throwing an arm around Ein to lighten the mood, but it backfires immediately. He reaches for a vase of flowers on the table nearby, maybe trying to make a grand gesture. Ein isn't having it. He splashes the water right in Alexis's face and barks at him to keep his hands off. Alexis ends up on the floor, sputtering, while Ein just looms over him. It's a total mess. Watching from the side, Riot realizes this group has absolutely zero chemistry. It's actually kind of impressive how much they hate each other. He takes a moment to double-check the mission. The details are clear, and he knows what he's here to do. The target is Alexis Slane. To get what he wants, Riot knows there's no room for mercy. This guy has to die. Flashback to a week ago. Alexis was meeting with some powerful figures in the shadows, talking about a legendary treasure. He was practically begging them for the chance, promising he'd find whatever it was they were looking for. He's after a mythic item that the legendary Riot Belger supposedly left behind in the depths of a dungeon. Back in the present, the party has reached the entrance of a D-rank dungeon known as the Crater. The combat starts fast. Ein dives in first, using his parry skill to deflect a heavy strike with ease. He's quick, catching the monster's attack on his blades and redirecting the force. A massive stone mud doll tries to flank him from behind, and someone yells out a warning. Ein doesn't need the help. He leaps into the air, dual-wielding his daggers with a snarl. He triggers another skill, Deceive. Suddenly, the monster can't tell which way is up as its senses get scrambled. With the enemy wide open, Ein goes in for the kill, looking like a man possessed. He carves straight through the mud doll, shattering the monster into a pile of rubble. The stone construct crumbles into pieces as the party finishes off the last of the lesser guards. Einbot wipes the sweat from his brow, satisfied. He points to the glowing magic stone left behind, telling the group they can finally move on. Watching from the sidelines, Riot finds the whole thing underwhelming. The mud dolls were sluggish, even for a D-rank dungeon. He can't help but feel that the world has grown soft. With no major conflicts, the overall skill level of adventurers has taken a serious dive. Riot, maintaining his Ray persona, reaches down to collect the loot. Alexis Lane spots the find and asks Ray to tuck the magic stone into his bag for safekeeping. Riot plays the part of the obedient porter. Alexis gives him a bright, charismatic smile and a quick thank you, though his eyes don't quite reach his mouth. As they trudge deeper into the dungeon, Riot contemplates how easy it would be to end Alexis right now. But he needs a clean kill, no witnesses, no evidence. Timing is everything. He needs to wait for the perfect moment when the dungeon itself can be blamed for the man's death. They stop in front of a pair of massive, imposing iron doors. Alexis announces with a grand flourish that they've reached the boss room. The heavy doors groan open, revealing a chamber filled with a sweltering orange glow. The giant golem rumbles to life, its core burning like a miniature sun as it looks down at the intruders. Alexis points toward a platform in the distance, ignoring the monster for a second to focus on the prize. Perched on a stone pedestal is a large, iron-chain treasure chest, the goal of their entire expedition. He reminds the party that the chest holds a legendary magic item, one that would let them retire in luxury forever. His plan is simple: get the chest and get out. He claims they don't even need to defeat the boss to win. Ein is skeptical. He doesn't see a clear path to the treasure that doesn't involve getting smashed by a mountain of sentient rock. The golem roars, shaking the very foundation of the room. Ein warns that one wrong step into the combat zone will get them all killed. Alexis just smiles that thin, dangerous smile of his. He brings up Dragon of Inferno, one of the most powerful adventurer clans in the country. Even they were forced to tuck tail and run from this place. Ein is floored. How is their ragtag party supposed to succeed where legends failed? Alexis tells him to relax. He's got a secret plan that he's been sitting on this whole time. Before anyone can react, Alexis draws his blade and delivers a ruthless, blindingly fast slash across Kalisha Noir. Kalisha's eyes go wide in shock as blood sprays across the floor. She never even saw it coming. The force of the blow sends her tumbling back into the shadows. Ein lets out a guttural scream of pure panic. As the golem begins its attack, Ein lunges to shield the wounded Kalisha from the falling debris and the monster's wrath. Alexis watches with a cold, detached amusement. The trap has been sprung, and the giant golem is now fully engaged. Ein is trembling with rage, cradling Kalisha. Alexis tells him to pipe down, explaining that this boss room has a specific gimmick. In the distance, platforms begin to rise out of the bubbling lava, triggered by the ongoing combat. A hidden path slowly reveals itself, winding its way toward the treasure pedestal. With Ein and Kalisha keeping the golem busy, the path to the treasure is wide open. Alexis can walk right up to it without breaking a sweat. The realization hits Ein like a physical blow. Alexis didn't just mess up, he used Kalisha as living bait to trigger the room's mechanics. Alexis doesn't deny it. He laughs, declaring that commoners are nothing more than tools meant to serve the elite. Ein spits back that Alexis is just a fallen noble, clinging to a title that doesn't matter anymore. The insult strikes a nerve. Alexis's expression turns murderous as he tells the thug to shut his mouth. He leans in, his eyes burning with a cruel light. He tells Ein that he's seen through their little secret. He brings up the impure deeds that Ein and Kalisha have been hiding from the world. Ein freezes. He can't find the words to defend himself as Alexis continues to tear into them. Alexis mocks the taboo they've broken, the sacred purity of a church sister. He threatens them with a heresy trial. His face contorts into a mask of pure malice. He knows he has them cornered both physically and morally. Kalisha sinks into herself, the weight of the accusation seemingly hurting more than the physical wound. Driven past the breaking point, Ein lunges forward and grabs Alexis by the collar, his face twisted in a mask of fury. Alexis Lane sneers at the fuming Ein, mockingly asking if it's wise to keep his eyes on him instead of the monster. He reminds them that they are now marked targets in the boss's combat zone. Behind him, the giant golem surges with elemental fire, its heavy stone limbs grinding together as it prepares for slaughter. With a sadistic glint in his eye, Alexis points out that the golem has already locked its sights on the helpless, wounded Kalisha Noir. The golem's narrow, visor-like eyes glow with a murderous orange light, fixating on its prey. The massive stone fist comes crashing down, pulverizing the floor in an explosion of heat and shattered rock. Ein dives into the thick of the debris, barely managing to pull Kalisha out of the way. He frantically asks if she's still with him. He looks back toward Alexis, his face twisted in a mixture of terror and absolute loathing. Cradling Kalisha against his chest, Ein curses their luck. They are trapped between a literal giant and a man who has completely discarded his soul. Alexis begins to walk away, his back turned to the chaos. He's finished with them, they've served their purpose as bait. He beckons to Riot, still calling him by his Ray alias, and orders him to get a move on and help collect the loot. He notes that if Ein and Kalisha are crushed too quickly, the hidden path to the treasure will disappear. They have to grab the chest before the idiots die. He throws a familiar arm around Riot's shoulder, his voice dripping with greed. He doesn't care what's inside, as long as it's valuable enough to fill his magic bag. Riot remains silent, his gaze fixed on the suffering pair. His eyes are cold, reflecting the fire of the chamber. Alexis loses his patience, shouting at the porter to stop dawdling and start moving toward the platform. Riot's internal monologue hardens. He doesn't care for the trash-deer noble, but he won't stand by and watch a person be discarded like a tool. He takes a step forward, but not toward the treasure. He moves toward the combat zone, much to Alexis's shock. Alexis laughs out loud, mocking Riot's apparent suicide mission. He reminds him that he's nothing but a mere luggage carrier. He tells Riot he's throwing his life away for people who don't matter. Riot finally speaks, a small, knowing smile playing on his lips. I wonder about that. A surge of mana floods the room as Riot activates a high-tier skill, magic item creation. In an instant, the legendary Holy Sword Excalibur manifests in a blaze of blue light. His eyes burn with an intense, otherworldly power, the mask of the simple porter finally falling away. With one fluid motion, Riot swings the divine blade. A massive pillar of holy energy erupts, slicing through the air with the force of a falling star. The sheer magnitude of the attack leaves everyone, Alexis, Ein, and Kalisha, frozen in a state of absolute disbelief. Riot stands amidst a swirl of digital-like particles, the sword's power still humming in his hand as he looks toward the boss. Ein stares at the porter, who just rewrote the rules of the dungeon, whispering in shock, "Just what on earth are you?" Riot pops a small charm. "My bad," he mutters. He sprays a mist that puts the others to sleep, its silent parfum. He's not letting them see what's about to happen next. Alexis stands frozen. He's still processing how a single blow took down the giant golem. He points a shaking finger at the man he thought was just a porter. "Who the hell are you?" Riot finally drops the mask. "Riot Belger," he says calmly. He lets the weight of the name sink in. "The one who's going to kill you." Alexis stares at the golem's remains, unable to wrap his head around that kind of power. He screams the question again, his voice cracking with fear. Riot repeats it cold and steady. "Riot Belger." He isn't hiding his killing intent anymore. Alexis can't believe it. He's standing across from a living legend in a dusty dungeon. He tries to laugh it off, calling it a joke. There's no way a lowly porter is actually the famous assassin. He decides Riot must just be another treasure hunter. "You're after the mythic item too, aren't you?" Riot just watches him, expressionless. Alexis starts gloating again, convinced he's figured out Riot's plan. He's certain Riot only joined the party because he knew what was in the chest. "That treasure is mine," Alexis says, trying to reclaim some of his lost ego. Riot doesn't bother arguing. He just unleashes a blinding surge of mana. He walks right past the stunned noble. He did the work, so he's opening the chest. Alexis grits his teeth, convinced Riot was just holding back his mana to steal the prize at the last second. Riot opens the lid, but there's no legendary weapon inside, just a few red bottles. He picks one up in size. It's a recovery potion, not a mythic item at all. He realizes Alexis is either a complete fool or he was set up by someone else. If it's the person Riot thinks it is, then Alexis is just a pawn in a bigger game. Alexis sees the bottle and his eyes light up. He's just glad it's small enough to carry without a magic bag. Riot catches the greed in his eyes and smirks. How about a deal? Alexis stops, completely confused by the change in tone. Riot plays the part of the mercenary. He says he's put in too much effort to leave empty-handed. Alexis isn't having it. I don't care about your money, I need that item. He moves for his sword, ready to take it by force. Riot's eyes go cold. You saw what I did to the golem, right? You really want to try me. Alexis flinches, the memory of that power hitting him like a physical weight. He swallows his pride and asks for the price. Riot holds the bottle up like he's selling snake oil. 25 million a bottle, a clean 100 million for the set. Alexis nearly chokes. That's enough to buy a mansion in the capital. Riot leans in with a mocking smile. Ask your sponsor for the cash, though I doubt they'd pay that much for someone like you. Alexis is fuming. He warns the guy not to mock him. He screams about his client, the world-famous Dragon of Inferno, who can drop 100 million gold like it's nothing. Riot realizes these are the guys who leaked the military info. Alexis demands the magical tool first. Riot plays along and agrees to hand it over. He tosses the tool over. Alexis catches it with a greedy laugh. The noble calls him an idiot. He explains that this item is his ticket back to nobility. There's no way he's handing it over to a lowly porter. Riot isn't interested in the lecture. He activates a tool called Pruning Iron Stake Picket. Glowing wires shoot out, ensnaring Alexis instantly. The wires tighten, slicing right through the guy's skin. Blood sprays everywhere. Riot tells him he's not going back to any noble house. Alexis is sliced into pieces in a red mist. Riot stands there cold as ice, finishing his sentence. He's the one doing the killing. A bit later, Ein finally groans and starts to wake up. Riot puts on his helpful teammate face and greets him. The first thing Ein does is ask about Carisha. She's slumped against the wall, still out cold. Riot reassures him she's just sleeping, and her wounds are already closed. Then he switches to a serious tone and tells Ein that Alexis didn't make it. According to his story, Alexis died triggering a trap. He claims the guy was trying to hog the treasure for himself. Ein can barely believe it. Ein remembers the boss fight and notes that Riot was incredibly strong to one-shot it. Riot just rubs his neck and lies through his teeth, saying he just threw a tool at random and got lucky. Ein looks at him, totally unconvinced by the "at random" excuse. Still, he calls him lucky and says he's a natural adventurer. Riot just thanks him. Carisha finally starts to stir. Ein rushes over to her side, relieved she's okay. Riot watches them, telling them they should head home together. They report back to the guild and finally part ways. Riot watches them leave, thinking about how they were secret lovers. It turns out Alexis had discovered their secret and was using it to blackmail them. Now that the nuisance is dealt with, they can finally be together. Riot hopes they can be happy as he walks away. Back at the main guild hall, things are as busy as ever. Mina is impressed by how fast he finished his promotion mission. Just like that, he's officially C rank. He doesn't waste time and asks for his next job. She tells him there's a request to accompany the S-rank adventurer Noise Hommel on a dungeon run. The mention of a mythic item grabs his attention immediately. That's the second time he's heard about one of those legendary items. Usually only the military's top brass even knows these things exist. He wonders if someone is leaking info and decides he needs to hurry his search. A man with a cold stare watches as a meeting concludes in the Dragon of Inferno Guild. The guild's conference room is lit by a mysterious blue crystal floating over the table. A scarred man calls someone a dim-witted fool for failing such a critical task. A woman in the hologram laughs, saying the failure might actually be a good lesson for the child. They discuss the mythic item, which turned out to be nothing but a fake. The vice leader dismisses the failure, insisting they just need to hurry their main plan. Their ultimate goal is to plunge the world into chaos once more. The shadowy leaders agree that the Dragon of Inferno must reign at the summit. The scene shifts to Tyrios, the vice leader of the Cerberus Knights, who seems to have his own agenda. Meanwhile, a lone figure enters the boss room of the hidden dungeon, Toros. Noise Hameln is already there, waiting. She notes that the visitor is late. Riot steps into the light, greeted as a highly anticipated rookie. He immediately recognizes the woman in front of him. It's Noise Hameln, the adventurer ranked second among all S ranks. Riot notes that meeting in a hidden dungeon boss room is a bit excessive. Noise just shrugs it off, telling him he should have been much faster if he were serious. Riot asks why she thinks she can talk to him like that. She picks up a small crystal fragment, looking unimpressed. She tells him he's about to find out the real reason she called him here. Suddenly, the massive blue crystals in the room start to glow and shift. A giant crystalline minotaur begins to manifest from the walls. Toros, the dungeon boss, stands fully formed and ready to kill. The beast lets out a deafening roar and prepares to strike. It unleashes a massive blast of energy straight at Riot. Riot stays grounded and activates Sacred Shield, Aegis. He notes that while the attack was heavy, his new body can take the pressure. The boss slams its massive fists down, shattering the floor. From her safe perch, Noise asks him if the rumor about the mythic item is true. She quickly admits that the whole thing was a lie just to get him here. Riot looks back at her, finally realizing he's been played. The boss doesn't give him any room to breathe, swinging its fist again. Riot jumps back, landing gracefully as Noise continues her interrogation. She watches his every move with an intense, analytical gaze. Riot realizes she isn't just talking, she's actively testing his capabilities. Noise warns him to stay focused if he doesn't want to die. Riot stops holding back and lets his power flare. He leaps high into the air, dodging a massive swipe from the Minotaur. He closes the distance in an instant, fist glowing with mana. He manifests a new tool, the Crimson Whip of Wailing, Kuchulain. Glowing red chains lash out, wrapping around the beast's horns. With the boss pinned, he summons the legendary Holy Sword, Excalibur. Riot brings the glowing blade down, ready to end the fight once and for all. Riot Belger stands in the crystalline chamber, while Noise Hameln watches him from above. Noise Hameln observes Riot, intending to measure his true strength. Riot gathers his power as the massive boss remains looming behind him. Noise steps forward, her heels clicking sharply on the icy floor. She tells Riot he is like a demon masquerading as a human. Riot remains silent, sensing her intense and mocking scrutiny. Noise bluntly states that Riot is not human at all. She manifests a gargantuan energy snake that coils through the room. The serpent's fangs snap shut just inches from Riot's face. Riot does not flinch, his gaze remaining cold and steady. Noise chuckles, nodding that most people would have reacted to the threat. Riot looks at the ethereal beast, entirely unimpressed by the display. Noise explains that it is impossible for a human not to blink once. Riot ignores her analysis, his mind focused elsewhere. Noise mentions her investigation into a magic item shop that burned down. Riot's expression shifts slightly at the mention of the ruined shop. She reveals that the shop's owner and grandson had already passed away. Noise stands confidently before the massive, recovered dungeon boss. The boss Toros breaks free and let out a thunderous roar. The energy snake lunges, clashing with the boss's massive weapon. Noise tells the beast not to interrupt her conversation with Riot. The energy snake slams the Minotaur back into the crystalline wall. Riot asks what her story could possibly have to do with him. Noise theorizes that Riot is the true creator of the mythic item. Riot watches her intently, his expression remaining unreadable. She declares him the genius craftsman who created the body of Riot Belger. Noise details his perfect physical form and veteran-level combat skills. Riot looks away, his secrets being systematically laid bare. Noise suggests that he is a resurrected soul, residing in a new body. She smiles to herself, enjoying the mystery she is unraveling. She demands to know where he truly came from. Riot stares back at her, the silence in the room growing heavy. He closes his eyes and reflects on his true origins. Memories of a bloody battlefield and a smiling infant flicker through his mind. He recalls a life of constant battle and a final, tragic moment. Returning to the present, Riot's eyes sharpen with new resolve. He politely tells Noise that he cannot answer her question. Taros lunges forward, finally breaking free of the energy snake's grip. Riot prepares to face the boss's final, desperate assault. He activates his magic item creation skill, summoning a blinding light. A massive lightning-shrouded hammer appears, Thor's hammer Mjolnir. Riot brings the divine weapon down upon the boss with crushing force. Riot Belger stares coldly, refusing to answer Noise Hameln's questions. Mjolnir's power surges, crushing the boss under its immense weight. Riot warns that if he spoke, he would have to kill her as well. He walks past the shattered remains of the boss as the divine hammer fades. Noise watches him, a glowing blade held near her face. She tells him to shut up and cooperate with her instead. Riot scoffs, stating that threats of violence will not work on him. Noise explains that he needs her influence to achieve S-rank status. Riot clarifies that his primary goal is obtaining specific information. Noise smiles, her expression becoming more predatory. She shows him a vision of the man who murdered his previous self. Riot's eyes narrow as he recognizes the target of his vengeance. She identifies the culprit as the Orderer, a man with a facial birthmark. Noise observes Riot's reaction, curious about his connection to the killer. Riot asks for more details, but she refuses to give them for free. He stares at her, considering her refusal to cooperate without a price. Noise promises her help if he accepts a new power dynamic. She leans in, telling him he must follow her orders to the letter. Riot sighs, finding the entire situation to be a massive burden. Noise giggles, nodding that his world-changing power is too valuable to ignore. She proposes a mutual deal. She'll find his killer if he helps her. Riot reluctantly agrees to the bargain, warning her to keep her word. Satisfied, Noise suggests they head back to the guild immediately. The two of them walk out of the frozen cavern, their deal finalized. Noise Hameln has seen enough to be certain. This guy is definitely Riot Belger. And if that's the case, things just got a whole lot more interesting. She smirks, already planning how to put this assassin doll to good use. A moment later, they're standing in a lavishly decorated room. It's Noise's private office, the kind of perk you only get once you hit S-rank. Riot doesn't care much for the decor, he just wants to know what she wants from him. She tells him to slow down and opens a heavy book. She's got some intel he'll want. It's an investigation report on the Hellfire Dragon clan's alumni gathering. Riot recognizes the name. They're the ones who leaked the mythic item intel to Alexis in the first place. On paper, this gathering is just an association for retired adventurers that funds the clan. But word is they recently managed to get their hands on a real mythic item. Riot asks who exactly issued the request for this investigation. Turns out it's the Kingdom Army, the same organization Riot used to belong to. They're frantically looking for whatever was stolen from them, though they haven't said which item it was. He realizes she wants him to infiltrate the alumni gathering and investigate. If he pulls it off, the payout is huge, and he's guaranteed a bump to B rank. Noise leans back with a wink, thinking she's offering a sweet deal. Riot isn't impressed. B rank is still too low for what he needs. He tells her to have an S-rank promotion request waiting for him by the time he gets back. Without waiting for an answer, he turns and heads for the door. If he follows the trail of this stolen item, it might lead him straight to the man who killed him. He clenches his fist, determined to avenge his past self and stop the misuse of these items. He can't afford to waste any more time stalling. He heads straight for the Hellfire Dragon clan's headquarters. Inside a rowdy tavern, a heavy mug slams onto a table. A rank adventurer Hyona is fuming. She's convinced some old bastard set them up for a fight that was way beyond B rank. Across from her, Rex just laughs it off. He tells her to take it easy while he enjoys a drink. After all, they made it out safe, and Hyona sliced the boss to pieces herself. She thinks he's way too laid back, even as he reaches for some bread. Dino, the party's B-rank member, pipes up. He claims that attitude is exactly why Rex got kicked out of his old S-rank party. Rex snaps back that he left on his own terms just to team up with Hyona. He jokes that if he'd known she was such a bad drunk, he might have reconsidered. Hyona slams the table again. That's not the point of her rant. She grabs him, warning that those old geezers in charge are looking for any excuse to get rid of the reformists in the clan. Dunkel Slane wants it made to look like an accident. A simple mix-up with the dungeon level should be enough to take care of things. On top of that, rumors have been spreading about a suspicious guy slipping in and out of the alumni gatherings lately. Hyona knows something is up. This reeks of something way worse than just guild politics. She's not the type to wait around. If they're really trying to kill them, then it's time to strike first. Rex tries to keep things from getting too extreme. After all, the guys they're talking about are the founding members of the clan. Dino points out the hard truth. They aren't S-ranks, and they're going to need allies if they want a real chance. Hyona isn't sure where they'd even find someone they can trust. Dino has a specific type in mind, someone with the flexibility to adapt and a sense of justice that won't cave to threats. Just then, the doors to the guild hall open. Riot Belger, now under the name Ray, walks in looking completely indifferent to the room full of warriors. Hyona wonders if anyone like that actually exists. The S-rank she knows only care about their own jobs, not the clan. Dino thinks about scouting from another clan, but that would just create more enemies. Meanwhile, the local thugs decide to greet the newcomer. Hyona considers a different path. Maybe they should just train someone themselves. Rex scoffs. He says the only person who'd actually follow her lead is a weirdo like Dino. She tells him to shut it and give her a real idea for once. Suddenly, a loud thud echoes through the room. Ray sighs. Hazing the new guys is the same no matter where you go. The rest of the guild watches the confrontation, wondering who the guy in the black coat is. Hyona is about to tell them to take their racket outside. But then she sees something that makes her stop in her tracks. Dino was watching closely, but even he barely saw the guy move. Before anyone could even react, the thugs are sent flying back. He hit their weak spots with perfect precision, holding back just enough to keep them alive. Hyona can't hide her excitement. There's no doubt about it, this guy is at least S-rank level. Rex is shocked. Most people would have completely missed what just happened. One of the thugs on the floor keeps shouting, but Ray doesn't give him a second thought. He stands there looking bored as the guy continues his empty threats. Hyona marches right up to him, cutting through the noise. She asks him if he's here to join the clan. Ray looks at her with those cold, ice-blue eyes. She doesn't hesitate. She wants him to join her personal party right now. The entire hall goes quiet as they watch the sub-leader make her pitch. One of the lackeys tries to protest, but Hyona snaps at him to shut up. She waits for an answer, leaning in with full confidence. Ray just smiles politely and turns her down. He has no intention of joining any specific party. His goals aren't about adventurer work. He needs to move solo to make sure he can disappear without a trace when the job is done. Hyona is surprised, but she doesn't push it. If that's how he wants to play it, fine. She reaches out her hand, telling him to let her know if he ever needs a hand with anything. She officially introduces herself as Hyona, the sub-leader of the clan. He takes her hand and gives his name. I'm Ray. The Hellfire Dragon clan was built on a legendary foundation. It was established 40 years ago by Pilsener Hajak and Melzen Hilt after they famously slayed the evil dragon Zarixale. Among all the high-ranking members, one man truly stood out, Dunkel Slane, known to most as the legendary Flame Dragon Slayer. He arrives in style, his carriage pulling up to the estate with all the quiet arrogance of a man who knows exactly how much power he holds. To the public, he's a respected executive of the Hellfire Dragon Alumni Association, but his eyes tell a different story. The nightly gatherings of these distinguished alumni, are rarely just about catching up on old times. From a nearby rooftop, Ray watches the arrival. He knows Dunkel is the uncle of the man he just assassinated and likely the one pulling the strings. After digging through some ledgers, Ray confirmed that Dunkel is the middleman funneling massive amounts of noble coin into the clan's pockets. It's almost a certainty that he was the one who fed Alexis the info about the mythic item in the first place. As the carriage moves out again, Ray stays on his tail, moving silently across the dark tiles of the city roofs. Unlike the other executives who hide in the shadows, Dunkel is a public figure, which makes him incredibly easy to track if you know what to look for. The carriage pulls up to a secluded gate in a part of town that definitely isn't for tourists. Dunkel steps out, greeted with the kind of stiff, practiced bow you only give to a man you're either afraid of or working for. Ray takes a high vantage point, keeping a steady eye on the entrance as his target disappears inside. He doesn't have to wait long to figure out what kind of place this is. It's an underground casino VIP lounge, where the city's elite come to burn through their fortunes while they plot their next moves. The atmosphere is thick with the smell of expensive wine and desperation, served up by waitresses who see everything and say nothing. Dunkel takes his seat across from a man in a hooded white robe, the kind of meeting that usually starts with a handshake and ends with a tragedy. The hooded man doesn't waste any time. He's confident, claiming that everything is ready for the final stage of their plan. High above, Ray deploys a sound spider. This magic tool stretches out mana threads like a web, catching every whisper from the room below. Dunkel leans back, complaining about how boring the world has become since true peace took hold. Without monsters to hunt, the guild's profits have tanked, and the heroic dragon slayers are finding it hard to stay relevant. He wears a twisted grin as he talks about resurrecting something that most sane people wouldn't even dare to dream of. The conspirator just laughs. To him, the more chaos they can stir up, the better it is for their bottom line. Dunkel gestures broadly, fully committed to the madness they've cooked up. From his perch, Ray listens intently, his expression hardening as the pieces of the puzzle start to fit together. They aren't just talking about a generic threat, they have a very specific name in mind. Zarexale, the evil dragon. If that beast wakes up, its mana will turn every monster in the region into a killing machine, forcing everyone to beg the guild for help. Dunkel can already see the mountains of gold coins and the return of his glory days. The hooded man promises that this ancient legend will be the key to bringing back the clan's golden age. Ray sits back on the shingles, the weight of the name sinking in. Zarexale, huh? He knows that name better than anyone alive. 40 years ago, it was Ray himself who neutralized that very dragon, back when the world still called him Riot Belger. He didn't kill it, though. It's currently sealed away in a secret vault deep beneath the royal capital. To keep the dragon dormant, he used two powerful artifacts. The first was the desert's dried spring, which drains a target's moisture. The second was the mana-calling gourd, designed to absorb and seal away mana into a magic stone. But magic can always be undone. If someone reverses the flow of those items, the dragon will wake up hungry. If that happens, the capital won't just be in trouble, it'll be turned into a sea of fire within minutes. Ray's resolve sharpens. He sealed that beast once, and he'll be damned if he lets a couple of greedy aristocrats undo his life's work. The sound spider catches more of the conversation. Dunkel is asking about the instructions from that person. The conspirator tells him not to worry, that the whole operation has been entrusted to his capable hands. Suddenly, Dunkel freezes. He's a veteran warrior, and his instincts are screaming that they aren't alone. The hooded man looks toward the ceiling, his eyes narrowing. He can feel a presence, but it's too faint to be a human. With a sudden surge of mana, he strikes out, and Ray's sound spider is instantly crushed into pieces. The crystalline sound spider shatters into dozens of pieces, its delicate legs and thorax falling to the floor under the conspirator's crushing gaze. The unnamed hooded conspirator's eyes narrow behind his glasses, having easily detected the presence of the surveillance tool. From his position on the roof, Riot Belger feels the sudden snap of the mental connection to his magic tool. He sits perched on the shingles, surprised that someone could detect a tool specifically designed to suppress mana fluctuations to the absolute limit. Riot Belger realizes that remote surveillance is no longer an option if he wants to hear the specific details of their plan. He hops down from his vantage point, his boots landing softly on the ground as he decides he has no choice but to infiltrate the building himself. Determined to uncover the full extent of the plot, Riot Belger prepares to enter the den of the Hellfire Dragon clan. Stepping into the main hall of the underground casino, he is greeted by a cacophony of voices and the clinking of glasses. As he navigates the crowd, his mind is still on the dragon's resurrection. Even if they want to cause damage, they'd need a way to control the beast's actions. He catches sight of a familiar presence in the crowd, one that feels like a shadow from his past. Flashes of memory flood his mind, a vision of a younger girl with a determined look, though the details are hazy and distorted. Riot Belger follows the sensation, rounding a corner in a quiet hallway away from the main gambling floor. He wonders if the person mentioned by the conspirators could be the same one his instincts are reacting to. He moves with calculated speed, cornering a figure against the wall before they can escape. The person lets out a surprised cry as Riot Belger pins them, his hand gripping their arm. The figure looks up, and he finds himself staring into the wide, amber eyes of Hyona. "You're the one from earlier today," Hyona exclaims, her face flushed with a mix of anger and shock. Riot Belger lets go of her arm, his expression remaining neutral as he asks her what on earth she's doing here. Hyona is dressed in a revealing bunny girl waitress outfit, looking completely out of place for someone he saw drinking in a tavern. "Are you working as a waitress?" he asks flatly, causing Hyona to recoil in embarrassment. She frantically tells him it's a secret and that she has her reasons for being in such a costume. Secretly, she's panicking, realizing she can't possibly tell a rookie that she's infiltrating the association to investigate them. Riot Belger studies her, his gaze intense as he considers her presence in the casino. Judging by the conversation he overheard earlier, he suspects that their goals might actually be the same. Hyona looks startled as he suddenly steps closer, leaning his weight against the wall beside her head. "About your invitation from earlier, is that offer still standing?" he asks, his voice low and serious. Hyona is confused for a moment, asking if he means the party she mentioned before. Riot Belger bluntly points out that the real reason she's dressed like this is to get information on the people in the VIP room. He mentions Dunkel Slane's meeting with the hooded man, offering to tell her about their plans if she cooperates with him. Hyona is taken aback, wondering how this newcomer could possibly know about the association's internal dealings. She agrees to cooperate, deciding that getting a lead on Dunkel is worth the risk of working with this mysterious man. "It's not that I trust you," Hyona says as she turns to walk away, "but I can tell just by looking at you that you're not a bad guy." She flashes a confident smile back at him, revealing that she is actually the sub-leader of her own clan. Riot Belger is slightly impressed, nodding that it makes things much easier when someone gets straight to the point. He asks her if she can cause a major disturbance in the casino hall to drag Dunkel and his partner out of their private room. Hyona's smile widens as she replies that she knows just the way to make a scene. Riot Belger is surprised when she suddenly produces a high-tech-looking device from her outfit. "A communicator?" he asks, realizing that her group is much better equipped than he initially thought. Minutes later, the heavy sound of marching boots echoes through the casino as the main doors are thrown open. A commander of the Kingdom Army rushes in, shouting for everyone to stay where they are and raise their hands. The patrons of the casino are thrown into a panic as the soldiers begin to surround the room. The army announces that they are from the Public Security Division and have received a report of illegal gambling taking place. The Kingdom Army commander continues his decree, ordering the casino's guests to remain still while the investigation into the illegal operation begins. From the shadows of a nearby doorway, Riot Belger watches the chaos unfold, while Hyona, still in her bunny girl disguise, reveals that she has her own connections within the military. Hyona confidently asserts that with the entire building surrounded by soldiers, there should be no way for their targets to escape the net. Riot Belger isn't so sure. He knows from experience that men like Dunkel Slane always keep a back door open for emergencies. Deep beneath the casino, Dunkel Slane and the unnamed hooded conspirator are already making their escape through the damp, vaulted tunnels of the city's sewer system. The conspirator is livid, hissing that this area was supposed to be under Dunkel's absolute control and blaming him for the security breach. "Damn it," Dunkel snaps back, his face contorted in rage, unable to understand how the raid happened despite the heavy bribes he paid to the local inspectors. To minimize the chance of both being captured, the hooded man suggests they part ways immediately and regroup later at their secret rendezvous point. As the conspirator hurries away alone, he reflects on the suspicious timing of the raid, feeling as though the army's arrival was far too convenient. Recalling the strange presence he detected from the sound spider, he realizes they were definitely being watched, though he doubts the military has such sophisticated surveillance. The man reasons that a genuine army operation would have been far more discreet to ensure total capture, rather than causing such a public scene. He emerges from the underground into a quiet, moonlit alleyway behind a row of stone buildings. Pausing briefly to check his surroundings, he concludes that their plans have likely leaked to a third party and decides he must accelerate their timeline. The conspirator breaks into a run, determined to put the dragon's resurrection into motion before the information becomes public knowledge. He suddenly skids to a halt, his eyes widening behind his glasses as a flickering light catches his attention. "Fire!" he gasps, his heart racing as he sees the orange glow reflecting off the damp walls of the narrow alley. He realizes it's not a building on fire, but a single torch held by a dark figure waiting for him in the dead end. The hooded man's voice trembles as he realizes he's been intercepted, calling out into the darkness to find out who is blocking his path. Before he can react, a powerful kick comes out of the shadows, striking him squarely in the chest with bone-jarring force. The impact is so immense that the conspirator is lifted off his feet, his breath escaping in a sharp wheeze as he is sent flying backward. He grits his teeth against the searing pain in his ribs, struggling to maintain his composure even as he is overpowered. The man skids across the stone floor, the friction tearing at his fine robes until he finally comes to a stop several meters away. The steady, rhythmic sound of boots clicking against the pavement signals the approach of his assailant. Clutching his bruised side, the conspirator looks up in shock, realizing that the man standing before him possesses a level of power far beyond any ordinary soldier. Riot Belger cornered his target in a dark alley. The man in the white hood immediately knew he wasn't dealing with a rookie and demanded to know what he wanted. Riot didn't beat around the bush. He wanted to know exactly what was discussed during that secret meeting with Dunkel Slane. The conspirator's eyes narrowed as he finally put the pieces together. He realized right then who had been eavesdropping on their plans. He wasn't in a talkative mood. Instead of answering the question, he reached for a hidden blade. With a sharp shout, he lunged forward for a quick strike. But as he struck, his form began to melt into the ground like a puddle of ink. He vanished completely using a skill called Shadow Dive. Riot stood his ground, scanning the area for any sign of movement. The villain surged out of the darkness right behind him, aiming a lethal blow at his blind spot. Riot caught the movement and shifted his focus in an instant. A red flash filled the air as he parried the strike with perfect timing. The hooded man stared in shock as a glowing chain wrapped around his weapon, pinning it in place. Riot admitted the skill was perfect for an assassin, but he wasn't going to let it work a second time. He manifested a new tool, the Crimson Whip of Wailing. Its length and power adjusted automatically to the flow of his mana. The villain looked impressed but didn't back down. He prepared his next move with a sinister grin. From the shadows, a dozen daggers materialized, hovering in the cold night air. They surrounded Riot from every direction, ready to close in and shred him to pieces. Riot didn't even flinch. He just spun the whip in a blinding blur, swatting every blade out of the sky. The conspirator couldn't believe his eyes. His entire barrage had been neutralized in a split second. He watched the red chain settle, realizing Riot was mocking him with that display of speed. It was clear that standard attacks were never going to be enough against this opponent. Riot looked back at him, his gaze as cold and sharp as a razor. The hooded man realized he couldn't afford to keep any of his best cards hidden anymore. He let out a low laugh, the atmosphere in the alley shifting as he finally got serious. He drew two massive, heavy swords that gleamed with a faint blue light in the shadows. Riot recognized the fighting style. It reminded him of a certain someone he'd crossed paths with in his past life. The ground cracked as the conspirator kicked off, closing the distance between them in a heartbeat. He swung both heavy blades with murderous intent, declaring that Riot wouldn't be leaving this alley alive. Riot watched the blade's trajectory, his eyes tracking every move without blinking. The heavy steel slammed down, sending sparks flying as Riot leaned back just far enough to avoid the strike. He noted that the man's reach was far greater than the length of the blades themselves suggested. The exchange continued, with the sounds of high-speed strikes echoing through the narrow space. The villain grinned through his teeth, enjoying the rush of the battle finally heating up. Riot was impressed by the raw arm strength it took to dual-wield such massive weapons so effortlessly. But he didn't want to drag this out in a battle of endurance. He needed a quick way to finish it. He deployed another magic item, pruning iron stakes, filling the entire alley with nearly invisible mana threads. The conspirator scoffed at the display, calling the thin wires a cheap trick. Riot knew better. A truly skilled warrior would recognize the danger of these threads the moment they saw them. The hooded man used Shadow Dive again, attempting to bypass the web of steel entirely. But as he emerged, he found himself sliced by the very threads he thought he'd avoided. He gasped as he realized Riot had predicted his exact movement and laid a trap behind him. Riot looked at him with pure disdain, mocking him for falling for such obvious bait. The villain spat in frustration. He was trapped, but he hinted that he still had one more trick up his sleeve. The unnamed hooded conspirator pulled out his ultimate trump card, a golden bell. He laughed, sure that he'd finally turned the tables. He rang it with a manic grin, declaring that Riot Belger was about to become his most obedient pawn. Riot stared at the artifact, the echoes of memory. He knew exactly what it was capable of. He'd seen it destroy lives in the past. But instead of falling under its spell, Riot just started laughing. The conspirator's face dropped as he demanded to know what was so funny. His smirk only grew wider. He wasn't surprised by the bell, he'd been expecting it. He had tracked every single incident connected to this mythic item, just to get to this exact point. He'd finally found a concrete trace of the Orderer. The villain stood there paralyzed by confusion, unable to understand how Riot could still be standing. In a desperate move to reclaim control, he rang the bell again with everything he had. A distorted wave of colorful magical energy erupted, flooding the alley with brainwashing power. The conspirator screamed, demanding to know who Riot really was and what his true objective was. Riot just smiled coldly. He told the man straight out that his little trick would never work on him. The hooded man's expression twisted in pure terror as he realized his weapon was failing. Then Riot dropped the ultimate reveal. He was the one who had created the countertool he was wearing. He thought back to his time at Lit's hideout before he'd ever even begun infiltrating the clan. He'd been working with an associate named Rit Brown, who handed him a specialized piece of gear. Rit explained that it was a magic tool designed specifically to disrupt magical interference. It was the perfect, tailor-made counter to the brainwashing waves of the echoes of memory. In the present, the wave cancellation ear cuff on Riot's ear hummed to life, nullifying the energy waves instantly. The conspirator stared, his mind reeling as he watched a mythic item fail so completely. He realized right then that the situation had spiraled way beyond his control. Knowing he was outmatched, the villain used his shadow magic to dive into a dark hole and escape. Riot watched him vanish, pondering the escape mechanic. It seemed as long as the man touched a person's body, he could slip into their shadow and disappear. Riot stands firm as the masked thief watches from a distance, admitting that his interest is finally piqued. The thief draws a glowing blue blade, deciding it's time to get a bit more creative. A sudden explosion rocks a nearby building, sending debris flying. Inside, a woman cowers on the floor as rocks start falling from her ceiling. Riot looks toward the collateral damage, realizing the thief is perfectly fine with using civilians. The masked thief pulls out a golden bell and gives it a ring. On cue, the townsfolk's eyes turn red as they swarm the street like puppets. He commands them to swarm Riot and pin him down. Riot slides into a defensive stance as the crowd closes in. He weaves through them, frustrated that these people are being used as human shields. The thief shrugs, asking if this is something that actually bothers him. He laughs, relishing the sight of Riot struggling because of his own morals. The thief uses the confusion to launch a surprise attack from behind. He brings his sword down with a heavy strike. Riot realizes he can't dodge. If he does, the innocent person behind him will be the one who pays. He takes the hit directly, the sword clashing against his arm with a flash of light. The thief pushes his weight into the blade, fully expecting it to sink in. A massive burst of energy erupts from the point of impact. But when he pulls back, he's confused. He didn't feel the sensation of cutting through flesh at all. Riot stands there without a scratch, calmly telling him he's just a little tougher than most. The thief isn't convinced and asks just how long Riot can keep playing the hero. He sends more civilians to swarm him, trying to drown him in numbers. Riot realizes he needs to end this farce quickly. He activates a skill, manifesting silent perfume that spreads a purple mist across the area. The civilians immediately lose consciousness and slump to the ground. The thief is caught off guard, suddenly finding himself all alone. Riot doesn't give him a chance to recover and launches a binding attack. Glowing threads wrap around the thief, pinning him to the spot. Riot retrieves the bell, declaring that the little show is officially over. He looms over the prisoner, ready to start asking about the orderer. He starts the interrogation by demanding to know who the thief's master really is. He wants to know the real reason behind them collecting mythic items. The thief sits tied up on the ground, but he doesn't seem broken yet. He claims that what they're after is nothing but disorder and total chaos. He explains that the items are just the beginning of their real goal. They plan to plunge the entire continent into a state of war. Riot asks if reviving the dragon Zarixale is just one piece of their plan. The thief admits they used Dunkel slain and his men as disposable pawns to stay hidden. Riot brings up the mythic items they stole from the Kingdom Army. The thief just smirks as his eyes glow, confirming that Riot is on the right track. Deep within the seal site, a massive red crystal pulses with heat. A blue gourd is already in place at the base, ready to break Zarixale's seal. The masked thief warns Riot that the resurrection starts as soon as a signal is given. Riot remembers the seal he once used on the dragon Zarixale. It relied on two specific magic tools: the magic gourd for absorbing power and the desert dry spring for draining moisture. Together, they were meant to keep the beast completely immobilized. If only one is released, the dragon will revive in a dangerously incomplete and unstable state. Riot realizes the thief did this on purpose. The man just chuckles, saying it's all for that person. He doesn't care about the capital at all, he just wants the chaos. Riot looks at him with pure disgust. The man is nothing but a fanatic. Meanwhile, on a quiet street, a figure is trying to make a quick escape. Dunkel Slain stops in his tracks, realizing he's been cornered. Hyona steps out from the shadows and calls out his name. She draws her blade and demands that he surrender for his crimes. Dunkel just laughs at her, calling her a naive little girl who doesn't understand the big picture. He tries to justify his actions, claiming everything he did was for the benefit of the clan. His expression turns sinister as he warns her not to get in his way. He clenches his armored fist, ready to force his way through. Suddenly, a massive pillar of light and fire erupts in the distance. Hyona shields her eyes, sensing a magical pressure far greater than any normal explosion. A massive clawed foot slams into the ground, crushing buildings instantly. The dragon Zarixale emerges from the smoke as Dunkel shouts that the capital is about to burn. The beast lets out a deafening roar that shakes the very foundations of the city. Hyona stares up in absolute horror as the sky turns orange. The dragon starts firing beams of pure energy from its mouth. Both Hyona and Dunkel are nearly blown away by the sheer pressure of the mana. Back with Riot, he uses his artificer abilities to manifest a colossal geometric weapon. He explains that interrogating the thief can wait. There's a bigger problem now. He prepares the Meteor Buster, a cannon designed to fire shells of compressed mana. He sets his sights on the monster and decides it's time to go slay a dragon. The beast towers over the city, wreathed in flames and destruction. Riot watches from a rooftop, looking completely unfazed by the size of the beast. A core of molten energy pulses within the creature's chest like a heartbeat. He realizes it's incomplete and barely holding its form together, which makes its mana even more volatile. Hyona catches up to him, calling out his name in a panic. He asks about Dunkel. She confirms she beat him to a pulp and left him tied up in a warehouse. She's still in awe of the incredible power from Riot's previous attack. Riot admits he was aiming for the head with a condensed mana bullet, but it didn't do enough damage. The dragon roars again, its body glowing with an intense heat. Riot observes that the mana leaking from its body is actually forming a protective barrier. Hyona is shocked. She's never heard of a creature having a defense like that. But she doesn't have time to argue as the dragon's mouth begins to glow. It fires a concentrated beam of heat right into the heart of the capital. A massive explosion tears through the streets, leveling blocks of buildings in an instant. Hyona is nearly swept away by the shockwave of the explosion, her eyes wide with shock. Riot catches her just in time, his grip firm and steady amidst the raining debris. A massive crater smokes in the middle of the capital, a testament to the dragon's overwhelming power. Riot urges Hyona to get moving, telling her that standing still is an invitation for death. They sprint through a narrow alleyway, narrowly avoiding falling masonry as the ground continues to shake. Riot lands on a high ledge, looking back at the destruction with a cold, calculating gaze. He warns Hyona to keep her guard up, as the dragon's next move is entirely unpredictable. The air is thick with the sounds of a city in its final throes and the cries of those left behind. Zarixale prepares another breath attack, the light from its throat illuminating the thick black smoke. The sheer pressure of the mana is enough to crush the very structures around it before the blast even hits. Far from the front lines, the client observes the beautiful destruction from his safe, high balcony. His golden eyes reflect the flames consuming the capital, showing no sign of empathy or remorse. Another blast levels a block of shops, sending a wave of intense heat through the streets. Hyona looks out over the hellscape, her voice trembling as she whispers about the city's fate. She frantically asks why the Kingdom Army and the Knights haven't arrived to stop this. Riot tells her that they can't wait for a slow-moving army. They have to be the ones to take action. Hyona wonders if they're being suicidal trying to fight a monster like that alone. Riot explains that the Alumni Association was just a pawn. The true mastermind is far more dangerous. He warns her that backup is a fantasy when you don't know who in the kingdom can be trusted. Looking her straight in the eye, he tells Hyona that she's the only one he knows is on his side. Hyona is momentarily speechless, the weight of his trust settling over her. Beneath them, the panic of the citizens reaches a fever pitch as the dragon approaches. The beast looms over an alleyway, its presence like a mountain of lava swallowing the light. A woman clutches her child and prays for a miracle as they are backed into a corner. That miracle comes in the form of Hyona, who drops from the rooftops with her rapier drawn. Her blade erupts in flames as she prepares a high-level skill to draw the dragon's attention. She shouts the name of her weapon, Levitain, and slashes at the beast's neck. She tells the survivors to run while they can, standing her ground against the colossal threat. Hyona returns to Riot's side, admitting that they really don't have any other choice but to fight. She yells that they're going to take down the dragon together, her fighting spirit finally reignited. Riot reassures her, promising that even the strongest legends have a weakness they can exploit. Hyona remembers his expertise and asks him for a specific dragon-slaying strategy. Riot begins the tactical briefing, explaining that a specialist always starts by limiting mobility. He explains that after the wings and tail are gone, the throat is the key to stopping the roars. However, the dragon's passive mana barrier makes a direct assault almost impossible. To pierce that defense, Riot begins a high-level item creation, his hand glowing with purple light. He uses his unique artificer skill to manifest a circular ring out of condensed mana. He explains that the ring will amplify her mana output to the absolute maximum for a short time. He gives the ring to Hyona and tells her he needs her to create a diversion for his final preparation. The dragon lunges forward, smashing through stone as if it were glass. Hyona accepts the mission and charges into the inferno with her enhanced speed. She unleashes her sword technique, Flame Dance, a whirlwind of fire that strikes at the beast. Hyona is astonished by the sheer power flowing through her, the magic item amplifying her strength to a level she has never experienced before. She realizes her mana isn't even draining despite the intense output, but she knows she must hurry to prevent more damage to the city. Zarexale opens its maw and fires a concentrated beam of destructive energy, its roar shaking the very foundations of the capital. Hyona grinds her teeth in frustration, feeling the overwhelming heat and pressure from the dragon's proximity. Riot prepares a massive artifact, the air around him crackling with intense blue kinetic energy. A massive explosion rocks the battlefield as Riot's plan begins to take shape, a blinding flash of light illuminating the smoky sky. Riot focuses his mana into a localized shield, his expression cold and professional as he calculates his next move. Hyona leaps through the air with incredible speed, her red hair trailing behind her as she positions herself for another strike. She watches Riot from a distance, wondering what kind of insane strategy he has planned to utilize the dragon's own mana barrier. Riot's primary objective is clear. He needs to move the gargantuan beast away from the city to minimize further casualties. He calmly tells Hyona that he plans to blast the dragon away along with its barrier, leaving her completely baffled. Riot narrows his eyes, having noticed a critical detail about the monster's defense during their initial exchange. He explains that while the barrier is perfect at nullifying magical energy, it cannot completely absorb the force of a physical impact. Hyona drops into a combat stance, acknowledging his point but still worried about the sheer, mountain-like size of their opponent. She looks at him with genuine disbelief, asking how on earth he expects to move something that massive. The dragon lets out a deafening roar, unleashing a barrage of fiery projectiles that turn the sky into a rain of molten death. Riot maneuvers through the explosions with superhuman agility, his eyes fixed on the massive blue kinetic construct he is manifesting. He declares that the solution is simple, his black coat fluttering as he prepares to unleash a wave of solid force. He compares the dragon to a bird trapped in a cage, using his power to solidify the space around the creature. The dragon is caught off guard as a wall of solid kinetic mana slams into its side, forcing the colossal body backwards. Riot shouts that if the bird refuses to move on its own, then he will simply move the entire cage by force. With a primal yell, Riot pushes his mana to the absolute limit, his face contorted with the effort of manipulating such a massive amount of energy. The impact creates a titanic shockwave that clears the smoke for miles, the dragon finally being dislodged from the city streets. Zarexale is sent hurtling away into the distance in a beam of light, Riot watching as the immediate threat to the capital is successfully removed. A massive beam of light tears through the night sky, leveling everything in its path. Hyona watches from the ground, completely stunned by the scale of the destruction. High above the city, Riot Belger stands on a floating platform, staring down the massive beast. He's not finished yet, activating his artificer skill to manifest even more power. The floating citadel looms over the city, a geometric fortress of pure mana. Zarexale, the incomplete dragon, can only look up as the trap is set. Riot looks down at the target, declaring that the show is finally reaching its end. This is where things get real. He reveals his true nature as a magic puppet, a living mythic item with 10 times the mana of any human. He slips on the circular ring, condensing all that raw energy into a single, focused point. One hit, that's all the assassin needs to physically move a creature as massive as an evil dragon. He throws the punch, and the sheer force of the impact shatters the air around them. The dragon is gone, but the price was high. Riot's arm is a charred, smoking mess. See, his magic circuits act like blood vessels, and he just pumped way too much pressure through them. As the creature falls away, the doll realizes his body just couldn't handle that level of amplification. Humans have mental limiters to keep them from breaking their own bodies, but Riot doesn't have that safety net. He stares at his blackened hand, casually nodding that he still has some room for improvement. From the streets, Hyona is left wondering what kind of monster she's actually teamed up with. She runs over to check on him, but the relief quickly turns to horror when she sees the state of his arm. Riot doesn't even flinch, calling the horrific injury nothing more than a bit of backlash. Riot looks down at his charred hand. Hyona is worried about the damage, but he's already thinking about the next step. They look up at the floating castle drifting in the distance. That's their destination. It's time to hunt Zarixale, the massive dragon threatening the city. The beast roars, a deafening sound that vibrates through the very air. They stand their ground against the titanic creature, as water and debris spray everywhere. Hyona is a bit shaken up after being thrown around, but Riot asks if she's actually starting to enjoy this. The dragon doesn't give them a moment's peace, charging up another devastating attack. A massive explosion erupts on the water's surface as they narrowly dodge the blast. Hyona shouts over the chaos. The dragon's attacks are only getting more intense. She's starting to wonder how they can even beat something that powerful. Riot stays calm, explaining that its body structure is the same as any other dragon, except for the barrier. Hyona realizes that means the dragon's roar might be the key to taking it down. Riot explains that dragons have a magic sac in their throat where power is concentrated during a roar. As the magic gathers for an attack, that's their golden opportunity. When it charges up that roar, the dragon's protective barrier actually gets thinner. Since magic is fluid, the weak point is always moving, but Riot has a tool to find it. Hyona looks at his broken arm, skeptical that he can do anything even if they find an opening. Riot smirks, revealing that he's not the one who's going to be breaking through the defense. The dragon strikes again, sending massive chunks of rock flying toward them. Hyona is confused. She doesn't think her own firepower is enough to bridge the gap. Riot knows she's holding back. He asks if she still has her trump card ready. The ace up her sleeve is a technique too dangerous for the city, but perfect for this battlefield. She's stunned that he's already figured out her biggest secret. Dust and fire fill the air as the pressure of the battle continues to mount. Hyona admits that compared to him, her strength feels like nothing at all. Riot hands her a special magic tool, the circular ring, to draw out the true power of her sword. She laughs and draws her blade, finally asking who he really is. He just claims to be a rookie adventurer with a decent grasp of magic tools. No more talking. The dragon is right in front of them, and it's time to move. The beast opens its maw, a glowing light signaling the start of its next roar. A massive blast of fire consumes the area as the dragon unleashes its fury. Riot leaps through the flames, a blue magic circle appearing to shield him. He shouts for Hyona to strike while the dragon is distracted. She's already in position, her feet splashing through the water as she charges. She calls him a slave driver for using her as bait, but she's not slowing down. The dragon roars again, its throat glowing with concentrated energy. Hyona's legs ignite with intense red flames as she activates her fire legs technique. She launches herself into the air with an explosive burst of speed, unleashing Renan Blam. She flies toward the beast's head, putting everything she has into this one strike. The flaming kick connects with the dragon's jaw with a bone-shattering impact. The dragon is momentarily stunned, and Hyona shouts for Ray to take his shot. Riot reaches out, a brilliant blue light gathering in his hand as he prepares to summon his true weapon. Riot activates his detection wave, a skill that lets him visualize the literal flow of magic around them. It's a nostalgic feeling for him, placing his life in someone else's hands after being alone for so long. He's reminded of the faces of the friends he once trusted, like Sarah and Rit. Trust like that deserves a response, so he locks his gaze on the beast and prepares to end it. The dragon's eye glows with a menacing light as it senses the threat level rising. It unleashes another blast of fire, but Riot doesn't even flinch as the flames wash over him. Hyona screams his name, terrified that he's about to be turned to ash. The entire area erupts in a chain of violent explosions, tearing the environment apart. High above the chaos, the detection orb hovers right over the beast's head. Riot watches the monster carefully, waiting for the exact moment its guard drops. He finds it, the one fatal weakness in the dragon's defense. The sonar scan highlights the creature's mana signature, revealing the core of its power in glowing colors. The dragon roars in fury, but it's just a desperate noise now that its secret is out. Hyona sees the blue light marking the weak point and knows exactly what to do. She doesn't hesitate, igniting her blade with a searing flame sword technique. She puts everything she has into a single, high-output skill. The heat becomes overwhelming as the energy from her strike starts to peak. Riot keeps his eyes on the dragon, acknowledging that Hyona really is a top-tier dragon slayer. She prepares her clan's ultimate sword technique for the finishing blow. She unleashes the Flame Bird, a massive avatar of fire that dives straight for the dragon's mouth. The impact is catastrophic, shattering the air and sending debris flying everywhere. Hyona breathes a sigh of relief, thinking she's finally taken the monster down. But a blinding pillar of light suddenly pierces through the smoke and fire. She looks up in shock, realizing the beast is still clinging to life. The dragon's outer layer of protection finally cracks under the sheer pressure. Its legendary barrier is officially gone, leaving the monster completely exposed. Riot steps up beside her, ready to deliver the final strike. He activates his most powerful creation skill yet, summoning the legendary holy sword Excalibur. He tells her the talking is over, and it's finally their turn to go on the offensive. The floating castle looms in the background as the energy levels around them begin to spike. The massive glowing blade manifests in the air, crackling with pure, divine magic. The dragon lets out a final, desperate roar, sensing its end is only seconds away. Riot and Hyona stand side by side, a perfect contrast of flame and cold steel. The dragon tries one last, frantic blast to keep them away, but it's too late. Hyona is shocked the thing still has the strength to scream that loud after the beating it took. The massive tip of the holy sword begins its descent from the clouds. A beam of concentrated mana strikes the dragon's head, pinning it to the ground. Riot gestures with his hand, guiding the impossible weight of the massive weapon. The sky seems to split open as the giant blade swings down in a perfect, glowing arc. With Excalibur boosted by mana amplification, Riot mocks the beast for never seeing a blade bigger than itself. He points out that its rock-hard hide and its ability to fly are relics of the past now. With a cold stare, Riot dismisses the once legendary dragon as nothing but a common lizard. The massive holy sword, Excalibur, descends from the heavens like a pillar of divine light, striking Zarexale with absolute force. The dragon's head is caught in a blinding explosion of fire and blue mana, its physical form beginning to disintegrate under the pressure. Zarexale lets out a final, agonizing roar as its body melts away, the legendary beast finally brought to its knees. The creature is reduced to a scorched skeleton that collapses into the sea of flames it once commanded. Riot and Hyona stand amidst the rising smoke, looking out over the remains of the dragon they have just slain. High above the burning city, the floating castle remains suspended in the moonlight, a silent witness to the end of the dragon's reign. Silence begins to fall over the city streets, punctuated only by the distant murmurs of those who can barely believe the battle is over. Dunkel Slane stares in utter horror, his face drenched in cold sweat as he realizes his greatest weapon has been defeated. He stammers in disbelief that only two people were able to accomplish such a feat, even as Riot and Hyona approach him. Riot looks down at the man with cold indifference, telling him they have all the proof they need of his betrayal. Guards quickly close in on the panicked noble, as he realizes his influence has completely evaporated. Riot activates a magic tool, a dimensional storage vault, which swallows the dragon's massive remains into a pocket dimension. Dunkel is left bound and broken, unable to comprehend how his master plan fell apart so completely. Hyona walks toward him, her expression stern as she remarks on how his little scheme has finally crumbled. She informs him that the security unit is taking him into custody, and that he can reflect on his sins in a cold cell. He is to be reunited with the rest of his co-conspirators in the alumni, his days of plotting finally at an end. Dunkel's eyes widen in terror as the reality of his situation sinks in, his face contorting with fear and desperation. He is dragged away by the guards, screaming in a futile attempt to resist the inevitable. Even as he is hauled off, Dunkel continues to shout his name in defiance, claiming his status should protect him from the lapdogs of the crown. Hyona sighs as she watches him go, nodding that he clearly hasn't learned anything from his defeat. She turns to Riot and offers her thanks, admitting that cleaning up her clan's mess was her responsibility. Riot redirects the credit, telling Hyona that her incredible firepower was the only thing that could have shattered the dragon's mana barrier. Hyona looks down at the ring on her finger, acknowledging that she only had that power because of the tool Riot gave her. Riot looks at her with a somber expression, reflecting on how truly amazing and dangerous magic tools can be. He knows that no matter how powerful a tool is, its ultimate legacy depends entirely on the person who wields it. These items are meant to be powerful, but that power makes them incredibly easy for the wrong people to abuse. They look out over the city, where smoke still rises from the buildings ruined by the night's chaos. Neither of them could have imagined that a single night of violence would leave their home in such a state of devastation. The human cost of Dunkel's ambition is immeasurable, and Riot knows that more blood will be spilled if they don't act. He realizes he must recover the remaining mythic items as quickly as possible to prevent another disaster. Hyona suddenly remembers the man Riot was pursuing earlier and asks what became of him. Riot looks away, his gaze falling back toward the darkened city as he prepares to give her the bad news. Hyona's jaw drops in shock when she learns that the thief actually managed to escape Riot's grasp. Riot shows her the street where he had the man pinned, but now only a few glowing mana threads remain on the ground. He admits that they were too occupied with the dragon to keep a proper watch, making it impossible to stop him. However, Riot knows in his heart that there is no way the thief could have broken through those specific bindings on his own. His echo of memories should have sealed the man's skills, and the iron stakes are not easily cut by common magic. Looking at the clean cuts on the remaining threads, it's obvious to Riot that a master swordsman intervened. Elsewhere, the unknown mastermind stands in the shadows, his presence looming over the events like a silent architect of chaos. Hyona suggests they regroup with the royal army, but Riot immediately shuts down the idea. He is determined to hunt down the man who fled and reach the mastermind before another tragedy can occur. Hyona looks at him with a serious expression, realizing that anyone who can use the alumni as pawns is a threat they cannot ignore. Riot asks Hyona to handle the official report to the royal army so he can tend to other matters. Hyona happily agrees, telling Riot that he's already considered a full member of her party. Riot remains silent, but he feels a strange sense of peace in her company. He reflects on how Hyona gives him the same feeling of safety he once shared with his old comrades during the dragon fight. Looking at her, Riot realizes that for some reason, this girl's smile gives him a newfound strength. Hyona catches him staring and asks what he's smiling about, causing him to quickly look away. "It's nothing," he replies, his voice steady as he watches the clouds drift through the night sky. Sometime later, Riot arrives at Rit Brown's underground workshop, where the smell of chemicals and old books fills the air. Rit is already waiting with tea, remarking that Riot certainly made quite a scene in the capital. He warns that summoning the float citadel was a massive overplay that will let every old ranger know Riot is alive. Rit continues as he serves the tea, nodding that the world believing Riot Belger is dead was their best protection. They discuss the mysterious client and Rit asks if this enemy might have known Riot from his active duty days. Rit warns that guys who can cause this much chaos won't give them the luxury of moving slowly. Riot looks at his hand, suggesting that if the mastermind comes for him directly, it will only make things easier. He plans to use his own identity as the bait to spring a final trap on the one pulling the strings. Rit is skeptical, reminding Riot that he already lost to this person once before, even in his prime. He then gestures to Riot's charred, mangled arm, asking how he expects to fight in such a state. Riot smiles confidently, stating that he isn't just going to repair the limb, he's going to upgrade it. Rit is stunned, knowing that Riot's body is already comprised of incredibly rare and durable materials. Riot's eyes gleam with a dangerous intensity. As he mentions, he just secured the perfect upgrade material. He reveals the massive, scorched head of the dragon Zarixale that he successfully stored earlier. Using the remains of the strongest dragon, Riot intends to make himself more powerful than ever before. Rit hands over a sealed envelope, having already made arrangements with a local magic stone shop. Riot takes the letter and thanks his friend, ready to begin the process of rebuilding his broken body. Rit Brown calls out to Riot as he heads for the door. He warns him to stay alert while he's out. Riot just gives a confident smirk and says he's got it. He's focused on the dragon Zarixale, knowing its remains are the perfect materials to upgrade his missing arm. But the metal is only half the battle. He needs a magic stone that's a perfect match to draw out its full potential. Following Rit's introduction, he heads to a local magic stone dealer to see what's available. Inside, the shopkeeper slams the counter, clearly losing his patience. Dan Kraft is right in his face, begging to borrow something just for a little while. Riot steps in, apologizing for the timing of his arrival. He hands over his referral, hoping they can get down to business. The dealer scans the letter, realizing Riot isn't just some random customer. He brings out a cage containing a small black creature called Iliknoa. Apparently, this magic cat coughs up one high-quality stone every single day. Riot takes the cage, nodding as the man warns him to handle the thing with care. Suddenly, Dan lunges forward, screaming for them to wait up. Riot looks over his shoulder, wondering what this kid's problem is. Dan shouts that he was actually the one who spotted the cat first. Riot doesn't even blink, letting the silence do the talking. Dan keeps rambling about how you never see this species in the middle of a city. Riot just keeps walking, telling the stranger he's not rearranging his plans. Dan isn't giving up, begging for just one chance to pet the fluffy cat. Riot can't believe how persistent this guy is being. Before he can even react, his hands are empty. Dan is already across the room, happily cuddling with the magic cat. Riot stares at him, realizing this kid moved so fast it was barely a blur. The cat, however, doesn't look like it's enjoying the attention at all. It lets out a massive surge of electricity, frying Dan on the spot. With its captor stunned, the cat makes a break for it. Riot and Dan can only watch as it sprints right out of the shop. They both freeze as a terrifying aura starts radiating from behind them. The dealer is absolutely livid, screaming that they'll owe him 100 million if that cat gets away. The chase moves out into the streets of the city. Riot takes off after it, showing some impressive speed of his own. The cat is a blur, hopping over market stalls and leaving them in the dust. Dan spots it and makes another desperate dive. He misses by a mile and goes face first into the wood. A cloud of dust kicks up as the cat keeps darting away through the alleyways. Riot asks if he's okay, but the kid just brushes it off. The cat pauses on a ledge, looking back like it's enjoying the game. Dan admits the thing is pretty fast for being so small. It hits the ground for a split second before launching itself again. Dan doesn't hesitate, leaping right into the air to stay on its trail. Riot watches the creature dash away, nodding its incredible speed. Dan Kraft gets a face full of static again, while the cat leaps through the air. Riot figures out the pattern. It releases a burst of electricity whenever it feels cornered. While Dan tries to stop the shaking, Riot realizes the cat isn't using its eyes. It's navigating through mana waves. He comes up with a plan to flood the area with mana and make the thing mana drunk. He activates his creation skill, manifesting a tool called a wave nullifier. Dan is amazed by the gear, while Riot explains that he's going to use it for the exact opposite of its original purpose. He flips the switch, revering the polarity to blast out waves instead of canceling them. The device lets out a massive pink pulse, completely overwhelming the cat's senses. Iliknoa starts stumbling around, looking like it's had way too much to drink. Dan realizes the trick worked like a charm and moves in to catch it. He manages to scoop the dazed cat right out of the air. He's absolutely thrilled, finally securing the fluffy little troublemaker. Riot watches with a smirk, glad the hunt is finally over. They tuck the cat back into its cage, making sure it won't be pulling any more stunts today. Dan apologizes for the cat bolting in the first place, but Riot just tells him to forget about it. The kid is still buzzing about that magic tool, asking where he can get his hands on one. Riot keeps his cards close to his chest, telling him it's a trade secret. Dan doesn't push it, understanding why someone would want to keep tech like that quiet. Before they part ways, he introduces himself as Dan and asks for Riot's name. Riot decides to go by an alias, introducing himself as Ray. Dan thinks the name is great and promises to treat him to a meal next time they cross paths. He gives a cheerful wave as he heads off, leaving Riot alone in the street. Riot looks on, realizing just how long he's been out of touch with the world. He thinks about the young talent he's met, like Hyona and Dan, and what the future holds for them. A memory of his late grandson flashes through his mind, thinking about the life he could have had. His expression immediately hardens as the grief turns back into cold fury. He vows that he'll never forgive the man who took that future away from his family. The cat watches him from the bag, sensing the sudden shift in his aura. Riot looks ahead with one goal in mind, finding the person responsible and making them pay. Somewhere else, a man reports the day's failures in a massive, sun-drenched hall. The silver-haired mastermind, known as the Sword Star, listens with a cold, detached expression. The reporter is trembling, barely able to find the words to explain what happened. Sword Star is furious that a mythic item was wasted without permission and still didn't get the job done. He lets out a terrifying surge of dark energy, asking the man if he's looking for an early grave. The subordinate completely breaks down, desperately pleading for his life. The tension is shattered when a familiar voice booms through the hall, announcing they're back. Dan walks right past the trembling man, asking the mastermind why he's in such a bad mood again. The cheerful boy Riot just met is actually Dan Kraft, the 1st Division captain of the Celsus Knight Order. Under a full moon, a remote island mansion hosts one of the most dangerous gatherings in the world. Riot is already in disguise, though even he finds his cat-like mask a bit ridiculous. He's dressed in a sharp suit, trying his best to blend into the high society crowd. Apparently, this kind of attire is mandatory if you want to walk through the front door tonight. The place is packed with nobles and wealthy merchants, all hiding behind their own masks. These distinguished figures have all converged here for a very specific, very illegal event. It's a night where tens of millions are expected to change hands within a single room. The host welcomes the guests to the dark auction, where the world's rarest and most forbidden items are sold. Riot isn't here for the luxury. He's tracking a stolen mythic item called the Magic Gourd. His mission is to snatch the relic back and uncover the identity of the person who put it up for sale. To understand how he ended up in this trap, we have to look back at a meeting from a few days ago. Meltson is checking in on him, specifically asking if his prosthetic arm is finally holding up. The young man is feeling pretty confident, having spent the last few days getting used to the new limb. This isn't just basic machinery. It's forged from dragon materials and a dark lightning magic stone. A single test run left a massive crater in the ground, proving the arm is way stronger than he expected. It's the perfect secret weapon to keep hidden until things inevitably go south. But the situation is complicated. While most of the dragon alumni were arrested, one got away. Meltson Bild managed to escape, and she's the one currently holding the gourd. The relic itself is said to have sealed a dragon, making it a high-priority target. Meltson is planning to auction it off to fund her permanent disappearance from the continent. At a place like this, anything from gemstones to human lives can be traded under the table. Riot assumes his only job is to capture the fugitive and bring back the mythic item. But Mulsun's expression suggests there's a much bigger threat lurking in the shadows. The guest list includes Tirio Diu, a man Riot has a very personal history with. His distinctive fighting style made him easy to identify once the agency started digging. A little research in the classified records confirmed that the man from his past is definitely involved. He's the vice leader of the Subra's Knights, a position that should represent peace and order. Riot is stunned to hear that a high-ranking knight would be talking about plunging the world into war. Meltson doesn't have all the answers yet. That's exactly what she's sending Riot to find out. If the knights are looking for a fight, he knows it probably isn't for the money. They're already well-funded by church donations, so they don't exactly need to steal for profit. Starting a conflict would just drive their faithful followers away, which makes no sense. Unless, of course, the knights are just puppets following the orders of a mysterious client. Suddenly, a familiar purple snake interrupts the conversation to get Riot's attention. The woman tells him to stay put, nodding that he's still as impatient as ever. He remembers asking for a request worthy of an S-rank promotion, and he's finally getting his wish. But this time around, the mission requires a partner. Riot looks up and sees a face he hasn't seen in quite some time. It's Gaia, leaning against the door frame with a confident smirk on his face. Since their last encounter, he's actually managed to climb the ranks and become S-rank number 12. Back when they first met during an exam, he was just an immature kid with a lot to learn. But now, his aura is completely different. The kind of pressure you only get from surviving countless life-and-death battles. Back in the meeting, Meltson explains that the path to S-rank isn't just about raw strength. Riot has to complete a mission with an existing S-rank, and more importantly, earn their official recommendation. Gaia makes it clear that he's the gatekeeper here. If he doesn't like what he sees, Riot's rank won't be moving. He knows the young man is trying to skip the usual grind and jump straight to the top, so he'd better prove he's worth the trouble. The Beastman isn't exactly a supportive teammate either, threatening to kill Riot if he slows him down for even a second. He ends his little power trip with a mocking, "Okay, big bro." That's clearly meant to grate on Riot's nerves. Riot isn't thrilled about having a watchdog attached to him, but he's focused on the bigger picture, getting closer to the client. They make an unlikely pair, but for now, their goals are aligned for this mission. Fast forward to the present, and the scale of this auction house is absolutely massive. Masked guests fill the balconies, all gathered for the same dark, high-stakes purpose. Riot scans the VIP section where royalty and the world's elites sit, hidden behind their own ornate masks. Gaia is already losing interest, but Riot notes that security is incredibly tight, making any stealthy approach a nightmare. The Beastman's solution is as subtle as a sledgehammer, casually asking if they should just wipe everyone out. But they're on a remote island, and Riot knows they need a more surgical approach to get what they came for. A scene this big requires careful planning, especially when the target is as valuable as their objective. He's confident that once they secure the magic gourd, the rest of the plan will naturally fall into place. The lights dim, and the auctioneer takes center stage under a blinding spotlight to kick things off. He welcomes the crowd to an exhibition of treasures gathered from every corner of the continent. The guy is a professional hype man, urging everyone not to let these priceless prizes slip away. Without any more stalling, he calls for the first item of the night to be brought out. It's a young elven maiden, treated like nothing more than a high-priced commodity for the highest bidder. The audience roars with excitement, but from their balcony seat, Riot and Gaia just look disgusted. Bidding starts at a cool 10 million, and the numbers start climbing instantly. Voices call out from the darkness, treating the girl's life like a high-stakes game of numbers. The price jumps from 14 million to 16 million in the blink of an eye. As the bids soar past 22 million, Gaia's patience with the whole spectacle starts to wear thin. He's visibly repulsed by the greed in the room, muttering about how much the behavior of adults makes him sick. Riot doesn't disagree, his eyes cold as he watches the cruel trade unfold. Finally, the auctioneer moves on to the main attraction everyone has been waiting for. He presents a supreme magic item created by the legendary Riot Bulja. It's the magic gourd, a relic pulsing with an eerie, ancient energy. This thing is supposedly powerful enough to seal away a dragon as destructive as Zarixale. The host even jokes that the gourd might end up sucking everyone in the room inside if they aren't careful. Bidding kicks off at 50 million, and the room goes absolutely wild. Gaia is already bored with the slow pace, yawning as he asks what the actual plan is going to be. As the prices hit 73 million, Riot decide it's finally time to stop playing around. He tells his partner they're going with the most straightforward approach possible. Raising his hand, he casually drops a massive bid for 100 million gold. The room goes silent for a split second before the auctioneer starts losing his mind with excitement. It's a huge jump into a new digit, and even Gaia seems impressed by the bold move. But just as it looks like they've won, a cold voice cuts through the sudden silence. A masked bidder raises their card, instantly upping the ante to 150 million. In a private balcony, a man with a sly grin watches the action unfold below. He knows exactly what's going on. He can't help but chuckle as he realizes his plan is working perfectly. They've taken the bait hook, line, and sinker. The auctioneer is having the night of his life, shouting about how historic this moment is as the bids reach astronomical levels. Riot remains seated and calm, but his eyes are fixed on the mysterious bidder who just raised the stakes. The host scans the room one last time, his voice booming as he asks if anyone is willing to go even higher than 150 million. Nearby guests are sweating, visibly shaken by the insane amount of money being thrown around like pocket change. The auctioneer prepares to bring down his gavel, seemingly ready to call it a night for this item. But just as he's about to shout "sold," a new bid of 300 million rings out, stopping him dead in his tracks. Riot raises his card again, his expression unreadable as he doubles the previous bid without a second thought. The room erupts in pure shock. 300 million for a single magic item is almost unheard of. The mysterious man in the mask smiles even wider, looking like he's enjoying this little wager with fate. The gavel finally falls with a heavy thud, sealing the deal for a staggering 300 million gold. Masked elites from all over the world watch in silence, still trying to process the sheer scale of what they just witnessed. Outside, under the light of the full moon, Riot and Gaia slip away from the auction house to regroup. They find themselves in a quiet courtyard, the sounds of the frantic bidding already fading into the night. Gaia looks over at his partner, a skeptical look on his face as he questions if that was really the straightforward approach Riot promised. The beastman is stunned by the amount of money Riot just threw away, still repeating the number 300 million in disbelief. Riot just closes his eyes, admitting that the move definitely burned through a massive chunk of his personal savings. In his mind, he recalled a meeting with a frantic magic item creator who was worried about the low value of his work. He had told the guy that household magic items weren't worth much, but he knew exactly how to inflate their value on the black market. He figured he couldn't put a cheap price on something he was going to use as bait for a high-level target. After all, once you slap the name Riot Belger on something, even the most mundane item becomes a priceless treasure to these fools. Gaia just grins, his shark-like teeth gleaming as he says he doesn't care about the money as long as he gets to kill someone tonight. A heavy footstep echoes through the courtyard, cutting their conversation short as a new presence arrives. The moon shines down on a tall figure in a heavy cloak who seems to have been waiting for them. The man adjusts his glasses, his voice cold as he addresses Riot by name, confirming his suspicions. Riot isn't surprised to see him either, identifying the man as Taria Duh, the vice leader of the Subra's Knights. Taria notes that Riot has clearly done his homework, which makes this confrontation much more interesting. He mentions that he took quite a scolding because of Riot's past actions, and he's been eager to settle the score. He points a finger toward Riot, his expression darkening as he prepares to return the favor in full. Suddenly, several hooded figures rise from the shadows, surrounding the courtyard with weapons drawn. Gaia doesn't look worried at all. He's been waiting for a reason to let loose and start a fight. With a feral roar, the beastman leaps into action, declaring that every single one of these guys belongs to him. He moves with incredible speed, tearing through the first wave of hooded guards like they aren't even there. Gaia delivers a powerful kick that sends another guard flying backward into the stone fountain. But as he finishes off the last of them, he notices something strange about the fallen men. Tyrio remains calm, even complimenting Riot on having such a capable and violent friend. However, he warns them that things are going to be a little different tonight, his hands glowing with a strange aura. An eerie purple light begins to pulse from the bodies of the defeated guards, their forms twitching unnaturally. Gaia's eyes widen as he realizes the men he just took down are actually standing back up, stronger than before. Riot senses the sudden shift in energy, his hand moving toward his sword as the real battle begins. One of the revived guards lunges forward with a speed that catches even Riot off guard. Gaia looks down at the fallen guards with disgust as they begin to move again, their bodies twisting in ways a human shouldn't. Riot narrows his eyes, his sharp senses picking up on something far more sinister than simple survival. Thin, nearly invisible threads of mana shimmer in the moonlight, connecting the guards to an unseen source. The realization hits Riot like a physical blow, These aren't men at all, but highly advanced puppets. One of the hooded figures tilts its head, its face a featureless white mask that hides no soul beneath it. Taria lets out a cackle of delight as he reveals his trump card. The mythic item, marionette blood of the jester. He explains with arrogant pride that his soldiers are immune to pain and status effects, unlike the men Riot fought before. The power comes from a dark derivative of the omnipresent string threads, a tool once meant for creation, now twisted for war. By pumping mana into inanimate shells, Tyrio turns them into tireless killing machines that mimic the living. Riot looks at the spectacle with cold disdain, disgusted that such a miracle of magic is being wasted on murder. Gaia sighs, his excitement for a real fight quickly turning into boredom at the prospect of smashing dolls. He'd much rather feel the warm splash of blood than the dry snap of wood and gear. With a burst of speed, Gaia ignores the puppets and lunges straight for Taria, eager to taste real flesh. But Tyrio doesn't even flinch, knowing his creations don't suffer from fatigue or the need for a break. With a flick of his wrist, he shows Riot and Gaia that his army is far larger than the few standing in front of them. Decaying wooden hands burst from the garden soil, clawing at Gaia's legs and pinning him in place. The beastman lets out a yelp of pure revulsion as the gross things swarm him from beneath the earth. The courtyard floor seems to come alive as dozens more puppets pull themselves out of their shallow graves. Riot draws his glowing red dagger, realizing that burying this many puppets required months of careful preparation. This wasn't a sudden ambush. It was a long-term plan set in motion long before they ever set foot on the island. He slices through a puppet's arm in one fluid motion, the gravity of their situation finally becoming clear. The entire auction was nothing but an elaborate lure designed to bring them right into this killing field. Gaia struggles against the mounting pile of wooden bodies, his usual confidence replaced by frantic annoyance. But Riot isn't ready to give up yet, unleashing a massive surge of energy to clear the path. Gaia is starting to get irritated. He tells the guy to prepare himself and calls him an old man. That really hits a nerve. The knight snaps back that he might not look it, but he's actually only 30 years old. Gaia doesn't care about the guy's age. He lunges forward, saying 30 is more than old enough. A heavy blow lands, and Tyrio can barely let out a gasp as Gaia pins him down. Then Gaia starts to let loose. A blinding light erupts as he taps into his real power. Tyrio can only stare in horror, completely frozen by the sudden spike in pressure. Riot watches from the sidelines, finally seeing why this guy had such a crazy reputation during the guild exams. It's his signature skill, super beastification. Gaia's form starts to shift into something even more feral. This state pushes his physical stats way past human limits and grants him a ridiculous level of regeneration. In an instant, Gaia closes the gap and delivers a strike that Tyrio can't even track. Blood sprays as Gaia's arm is torn, but he doesn't even flinch at the injury. Riot notes that as long as his heart is still beating, Gaia can fix any injury in seconds. Right in front of his eyes, Gaia's severed limb just grows back like it was never gone. Tyrio is losing it, screaming that something like this should be impossible. Gaia unleashes a flurry of pink energy slashes, shredding through everything in his path. A direct hit catches the knight right in the chest, knocking the wind out of him. His glasses fly off as Gaia lets out a roar, completely dominating the battlefield. Gaia grabs him by the throat, and Tyrio can only gasp out "monster" as he struggles for air. Gaia just laughs it off, saying monster is a pretty mean thing to call someone. He leans in close, jokingly telling the guy that he's actually quite adorable. He slams Tyrio down again, taunting him and asking if it hurts yet. Gaia offers a deal. If the knight apologizes right now, he might actually let him go. He flashes a wicked grin, clearly getting a kick out of the guy's suffering. With a massive splash, he drives his opponent into the water, ending the struggle. Gaia stretches out his arms, complaining that he still hasn't had enough fun. He's the S-rank number 12 for a reason, and Riot is definitely taking notes. Riot realizes Gaia has a dangerous side, and how he handles him is going to be key. Gaia turns around to head out, ready to move on to the next objective. Out of nowhere, a sudden flash of energy tears through the air from behind. Blood sprays everywhere as Gaia is struck, and Riot can only watch in total shock. A figure stands tall amidst the smoke and blood, a sword drawn and ready. The newcomer looks down at the body, sounding almost disappointed that his target is already dead. It's Dan, and he's looking down at the defeated beastman with a shark-like grin. He expected more of a challenge, but apparently Gaia was just too weak. Dan repeats his verdict, looking down at his prize with absolute disdain. Riot watches from across the garden as the situation turns south under the moonlight. He recognizes that face immediately. Memories of an old guerrilla unit come flooding back. Dan notices the eyes on him and turns around, spotting the protagonist. He seems genuinely surprised to see him there, asking what Riot is doing in a place like this. Riot looks at Gaia lying face down in the dirt and realizes this just got personal. Dan's grin widens as he pieces it together. Since Riot is with the Beastmen, they're officially enemies. Riot stays silent, realizing his former comrade has officially joined the enemy knights. Dan looks over a document, mentioning he had his suspicions the moment he saw Riot's name on the report. He looks down at the defeated Gaia, his expression unreadable as the Beastman lies silent in the water. Without another word, Dan lunges forward with a strike, asking if that's enough of an answer for him. Riot barely manages to react in time, his sword catching the heavy blow as sparks fly. Riot doesn't hold back and activates his magic item creation skill, summoning the legendary holy sword Excalibur. Dan lets out a laugh, clearly impressed that Riot actually managed to block a hit that fast. The two blades lock together, the air around them humming with the intensity of their mana. Riot realizes Dan isn't just fast. His raw strength is on another level, and one slip-up will be the end. They pull back for a split second, eyes locked as they try to read each other's next move. They clash again, their movements becoming a blur of steel and magical energy. Riot can feel the pressure mounting, thinking to himself that he's going to lose if he keeps playing defense. Dan notices the hesitation and taunts him, asking if all he knows how to do is run away and trade weak blows. Riot takes a breath, admitting that it's just been a long time since he had to go all out against someone he actually knows. He readies his glowing blade, telling Dan it just took him a little while to finally get back into gear. This is exactly the kind of fight Dan wanted, and he charges back in with even more excitement. He swings with everything he's got, daring Riot to try and see his next move. The courtyard becomes a storm of slashes as they zip across the ground at high speeds. Riot's focus is absolute, his eyes tracing every flicker of Dan's movement. Dan is absolutely loving this, his shark-like teeth bared in a wild, predatory grin. They zigzag through the air, their strikes leaving trails of light against the night sky. Dan lands and pauses for a second, admitting that Riot is performing exactly as he expected. But he quickly warns him not to get too full of himself just because he's keeping up. He begins to channel even more mana into his blade, the energy crackling with a dangerous intensity. He screams that this is only the beginning of what he's really capable of. A massive explosion of force rocks the area as their powers collide once more. Riot remains composed, staring through the smoke and acknowledging that Dan's growth is truly impressive. Dan is hailed as one of the kingdom's finest knights, a leader worthy of the elite First Division. His reputation is built on talent that would have made him a legend even in the elite guerrilla units of the past. Riot knows he's only alive because he's evolved past the person he used to be. A sudden, sharp sound echoes as the momentum of the battle shifts. Riot steps in and catches a lethal sword strike mid-swing with his mechanical hand. Dan is left completely stunned, unable to believe his weapon was just neutralized barehanded. Riot looks him dead in the eye and tells him those tired old moves aren't going to work on him anymore. A massive burst of blue energy erupts from Riot's palm, sending a shockwave directly into Dan. The force is enough to send Dan tumbling backward through the air, letting out a pained cry. He hits the ground hard, clutching his chest as he tries to process what just happened. Despite the pain, Dan can't help but grin, realizing it's been ages since anyone actually sent him flying. He hasn't felt this kind of thrill since he sparred with the Lord Sword Saint himself. He decides that beating someone this strong is going to feel absolutely incredible. Riot watches as electricity begins to arc around Dan's body, realizing the guy is about to use lightning. Dan activates a high-tier skill, his entire form becoming enveloped in a blinding electrical aura. He uses lightning instant thunder, turning into a bolt of pure energy as he charges straight for Riot. Dan comes crashing down with a lightning-charged strike, his blade glowing with intense electrical power. Riot blocks the heavy overhead blow, but the sheer force of the impact causes the ground beneath him to crack and buckle. Dan leaps back with a wild laugh, genuinely impressed that Riot's reflexes are sharp enough to keep up with his speed. His expression turns predatory as he prepares to get even more serious, sensing that the duel is reaching its climax. High above, a blinding, luminous blast of energy streaks across the battlefield, lighting up the entire courtyard. Reacting instantly, Riot invokes his magic item creation skill to summon the sacred shield Aegis to meet the threat. The shield holds firm against a massive vortex of energy that threatens to consume everything in its path. Through the blinding light, Riot maintains his focus, watching Dan's silhouette as he prepares for the next exchange. Dan doesn't let up for a second, launching a barrage of rapid strikes that rain down like golden arrows from his blade. He grins through the flashes of light, taunting Riot and asking him how he plans to deal with this sudden surge of power. Riot is pushed back, his arms smoking from the heat of the continuous magical friction as he absorbs the impact. Realizing he needs a weapon with better range and versatility, Riot summons a new tool, the glowing scarlet whip. The red chains whip through the air with a mind of their own, creating a deadly dance of steel and magic around the protagonist. Dan is forced to scramble back, his eyes wide in surprise as the chains nearly catch him in their erratic path. Riot doesn't give him an inch, lunging forward and telling Dan that he shouldn't have gotten so cocky. He unleashes a massive burst of blue energy, the pressure waves shattering the nearby architecture as he strikes out. Dan manages to stay on his feet, but he's visibly rattled, wondering if Riot is actually some kind of magician with an endless arsenal of weapons. He refuses to stay down, his pride as a knight forcing him to gather his strength for one final, desperate attempt. Dan channels every ounce of his mana into his ultimate technique, the Vortex Ultimate, creating a storm of golden light. The very air begins to distort from the sheer pressure of the mana, being condensed into the blade for the final strike. Riot's prosthetic arm begins to glow with a terrifying, incandescent orange light as he prepares to finish the fight once and for all. He looks right through Dan, stating coldly that the knight was never his actual objective in coming here. Sensing the overwhelming killing intent, Dan's bravado finally slips as he realizes the true, terrifying gap between their powers. Riot's eyes glow with a dark, vengeful light as he commits to a final, soul-crushing strike with his glowing arm. The two powers collide in a final, desperate clash that sends a shockwave visible for miles across the kingdom. A massive explosion of dark and red energy rips through the courtyard, signaling the end of the chapter's climactic battle. A tiny spark ignites in the middle of the courtyard. It swells instantly, gathering a massive amount of magic power. A column of golden light tears through the sky. The entire auction mansion grounds are swallowed by the eruption. Riot stands in the wake of the blast, his form silhouetted against the fatting glow. He looks down at his prosthetic arm, which is leaking both blood and dark smoke. That was the dark lightning, a trump card he'd been saving up. The impact slams into Dan, sending him crashing through the stone steps. Lightning crackles across the debris, finishing off whatever was left of the courtyard. A secondary shockwave rocks the foundation as the magic stabilizes. Riot catches his breath as the light starts to fade. He's exhausted, but he managed to land the finishing blow. Dan lies broken among the ruins, his pride as shattered as the stairs. Coughing up blood, he realizes the boy used the very power he once gave away. Riot's hand is trembling as the mana dissipates. He knew the cost would be high, but the magic consumption was even worse than he expected. If he hadn't gone all out right then, he would have been the one dead in the dirt. He checks his opponent, noting that Dan is still barely breathing. Suddenly, a massive flash of light tears through the darkness. Riot snaps his head around. Someone else is here. The sheer pressure in the air brings back a flood of old memories. The blinding light starts to reveal the face of the newcomer. It's Haste, the Sword Star himself, arriving in a literal blaze of glory. Tyrio nearly loses it, shouting that this man is the client. Haste stands over the fallen swordsman, looking like a god among the rubble. He looks down at Dan with a bored expression and notes that he lost. Riot doesn't care who he is. He just sees another obstacle. He lunges forward, putting everything he has into a surprise strike. He puts his weight into his next move, Devour the Darkness. The strike connects with enough force to level a building. But the sound that followed was not a collision. It was the screech of metal grinding against metal as one of Riot's arms was sheared off. Riot is stunned. Haste's body is literally harder than mithril. Haste hasn't even moved. He just mocks Riot for leaking too much bloodlust. With a wave of his hand, a barrage of light slashes back. Riot was caught off guard as a flurry of slashes appeared all over his body. He tries to brace himself, but the fight is already one-sided. He realizes instantly that this guy is on a completely different level of power. A heavy counter sends Riot flying backward through the ruins. The shockwaves alone are enough to tear the environment apart. Riot grits his teeth, knowing he'll lose a head-on contest of strength. If he wants to survive, he has to try something else. He manifests a cursed dagger, the thorn of tongue severing, designed to keep wounds bleeding forever. Riot dives in close, knowing he has to neutralize those massive swings of the greatsword. He switches tactics, relying purely on martial arts and raw swordsmanship to find an opening. With this, he yells, pouring everything he has left into his next strike. The impact sends a shockwave through the air as their powers collide. Haste looks down, surprised to see a thin trail of blood now marking his face. He realizes the dagger wasn't just for cutting. It's a cursed tool specifically designed to keep wounds from closing. Haste recognizes the movements. It's the exact same style as a legendary figure from his past. But even with that realization, he isn't about to back down. The knight threw a weapon, catching Riot off guard. They exchange a flurry of blows, each one faster and more desperate than the last. A grunt of pain escapes Haste as the cursed blade finds its mark again. He pushes through the damage, retaliating with a speed that defies his injuries. The force of the counterattack is too much, sending Riot tumbling through the air. Haste raises his massive blade, gathering an overwhelming amount of mana for a final hit. Riot looks up from the ground, finally realizing the true scale of the power he's facing. Standing there like an invincible wall, the Sword Star prepares to end the duel. "You fall far short of that person," Haste says, his voice dripping with cold disappointment. He swings, and the entire world is swallowed by a blinding flash of light. When the smoke clears, Haste is standing calmly in the center of the wreckage, completely untouched. He admits Riot has some talent, but clearly, that isn't enough to beat him. Dan crawls toward his leader, his voice weak as he begs for help. Haste tells him to shut up, nodding that talking will only make his injuries worse. Riot is struggling to even stay conscious as the dust finally starts to settle. In retrospect, Riot was genuinely terrified by the sheer efficiency and raw power he had just witnessed. Riot knows his chances of winning a fair fight are basically zero in his current condition. But he refuses to just let this guy walk away with the prize. But the knight had no intention of letting things end like that. He turned back to look at Riot, pointing out the fact that he still hadn't retrieved the magic gourd. Raising his hand, he channels a terrifying skill, as a massive surge of energy whips everything around him into a colossal blade. Riot senses the sudden shift in energy. Something big is coming, and it's dangerous. Staring coldly at the protagonist, Haste activates Star Burst. A massive pillar of pure energy erupts, visible for miles across the sea. The explosion is cataclysmic, literally tearing the island apart. The entire auction mansion collapses as the shockwave obliterates everything in its path. It's total devastation. Haste stood there calmly, gazing down at the ruins he had just created. The explosion was so powerful that the ocean's surface seemed to boil, creating a massive void in the middle of the vast sea. He looks at the artifact, convinced that no one can stop him now. He won't let anyone stand in his way. The light finally begins to fade, leaving nothing but ruin behind. Meanwhile, Riot is sinking fast into the freezing depths of the ocean. As his consciousness fades, he remembers where he saw that technique before. It was the signature move of the legendary Sword Saint. Just before the strike landed, Riot used wave cancellation to mask his presence. He managed to leap into the sea in time, narrowly escaping the full brunt of the explosion. But he knows that simply surviving isn't enough. He needs a flawless plan to actually take down a monster like that. Floating in the dark water, Riot grits his teeth against the cold and the stinging pain of his defeat. "Just you wait," he vows silently. "Next time I will kill you." Nearby, a small rescue boat battles the turbulent waves left behind by the blast. Tiriodiu stares at the empty ocean where the island used to be, his face pale with shock. The entire island has been erased from existence, leaving nothing but foam and wreckage. He frantically scans the water, praying that his comrade didn't perish in the catastrophe. Suddenly, a mechanical hand surges out of the water and grips the side of the boat with a metallic clang. Riot hauls himself up, his body battered and soaked, while Turia cries out in relief at seeing him alive. Leto Brown is horrified by the extent of the injuries, wondering what could have possibly caused such devastation. Gasping for air, Riot mutters through clenched teeth about his mission finally coming to an end. He reaches out, grabbing Leto Brown's shoulder with a strength born of pure desperation. "I found him," he gasps out, the words fueled by a burning need for vengeance. "The client." Later, Gaia is submerged in a glowing green recovery tank, his body slowly mending under the care of advanced machinery. Looking at the tank, the handler notes that his opponent must have been a truly formidable enemy. Riot admits that even in peak condition, defeating the Sword Star would have been a near-impossible feat. But for him, this wasn't just a loss. It was a field test to analyze his enemy's every move. The handler smiles coldly, asking if he's finally identified the man who managed to bring him down. He clenches his fist, the mechanical joints whirring as he confirms his target. His enemy is none other than the man who stands at the pinnacle of the Knights, the man known as the symbol of peace. Haste the Sword Star, and it seems his loyal subordinates, Dan and Tyrio, were acting right alongside him. Riot considers the possibility that they weren't even sharing all their information with one another. The world would be shocked to learn the very Knights tasked with stopping evil are actually plotting a war. The handler chuckles, nodding that these supposedly holy knights are far more corrupt than anyone in the criminal underworld. Riot tells her to alert the royal army. If a war is coming, the innocent need protection. He turns to leave, his resolve harder than the steel of his prosthetic arm. He has no time to waste standing still. His target is finally within his reach. "Wait," a voice calls out as the handler's familiar, a purple snake, slithers toward him. The serpent presents a sleek, high-tech card held firmly between its fangs. The handler explains that he successfully retrieved the intel on the Night Order and the magic-calling Gore. Since he also managed to save Gaia's life during the chaos, she finally grants him her full recognition. With the mission officially cleared, he is promoted to the elite S rank within their organization. His reward is the cucka to the classified reading room, a place of forbidden knowledge. She hands it over with a smirk, telling him to make good use of the access he's earned. At the heart of the Table of Ruin, Guild lies a massive information terminal, glowing with data. With this access, he can finally dig through the classified documents to find Haste's weakness. He won't make the same mistake twice. This time, he will map out a perfect strategy to suppress Haste's movements. A dark fire burns in his eyes as he makes a final promise to eliminate his foe for good. High above in the capital, Haste sits in his sun-drenched office, unaware of the shadow lengthening behind him. Dan, a battle-hungry knight with spiky lavender hair and a shark-toothed grin, peeks through the heavy double doors of the office. He enters casually, interrupting Haste, the regal leader known as the Sword Star, who is busy reviewing reports about the new vice commander. Dan leans back with a groan, finding the bureaucratic talk incredibly dull. He was hoping for a personal recommendation instead. Haste looks up from his papers, his gaze cold and unimpressed by his subordinate's lack of discipline. Ignoring the tension, Dan mentions that he's recalled an interesting detail about the assassin they supposedly finished off. Haste continues to scratch his quill against the parchment, asking which guy he's referring to which Dan simply says, "Riot." "I have no interest in the dead," Haste replies flatly, not even sparing a glance at the lavender-haired knight. But when Dan suggests that the dead man might still be breathing, Haste's pen suddenly grinds to a halt. The air in the room shifts instantly, Haste's golden eyes narrowing as a dangerous focus takes hold of him. Dan recalls their previous encounter in the city, remembering a specific detail Riot had mentioned during their fight. A memory of Riot, a stern-faced young man in a tactical coat, surfaces as Dan speaks of Riot's connection to the Brown Trading Company. Taking that lead, Dan explains how he personally ransacked every one of Lido Brown's hidden warehouses and offices. He leans in with a mocking glint in his eyes, asking Haste to guess what he managed to find in the wreckage. It was a mask, the very same one Riot was seen wearing before the island was reduced to ash. Dan laughs, boasting about his memory as he links the mask to a mysterious guest from a high-profile auction. Haste remains silent, the implications of Riot's survival and his connection to the trading company settling in. Suddenly, Haste pushes back from his desk with a sharp clatter, startling Dan. Without a word, the Sword Star strides out of the office, his white and gold cape snapping in the air behind him. He reaches a secluded storage area, his eyes scanning the shelves for a specific high-priority item. He pulls a small container from the shadows, his gloved hands trembling slightly with a burgeoning suspicion. He holds up the magic-calling gourd, the mythic artifact that was supposed to be the prize of their recent campaign. He stares at the ornate surface, his expression hardening as he notices a subtle, damning imperfection. With a sudden surge of strength, Haste tests the integrity of the object, the artifact beginning to crumble under his grip. His face contorts with rage as the truth hits him. The item in his possession is nothing more than a clever, worthless fake. In the middle of the vault, a tiny mechanical spider scuttles across the floor. Haste realizes he's been played the moment he finds the little bug. Dan watches him with a shark-like grin, curious about what the knight's next move will be. Haste remains silent for a moment before deciding it's time to move out. He's done playing games and wants every shred of evidence wiped from existence. A few days pass and the city seems quiet, but it's just the calm before a storm. In a hidden workshop, Riot dangles an identical mechanical spider by a thin thread. His plan worked perfectly. He slipped a fake to the strongest guy in the kingdom, and the man actually fell for it. He pulls up a holographic display, watching the signal pulse on his map. He thinks back to nearly getting caught earlier, and decides to add a sleep mode to his tracking strings just in case. The enemy only managed to find one of his decoys, which was exactly what he wanted. The real tracker is tucked away in the corner of Haste's vault, hidden right in plain sight. Riot slips out into the night, ready to follow that signal wherever it goes. With that device active, there's no way Haste can hide from him now. He walks through the crowded city streets, planning his next move. But something in the distance makes him freeze dead in his tracks. Right in the middle of town, Hyuna and Leto are being dragged away in chains by the guards. A soldier screams at the crowd, declaring a total crackdown on anyone associated with the cult. He holds up a wanted poster with Riot's face on it, offering a massive reward for him dead or alive. Riot watches from the back of the crowd, his hood pulled low to hide his face. He realizes Haste is playing dirty, using his friends as bait to lure him into a trap. He heads to a secret facility and pulls up a massive data terminal to see what the enemy knows. He starts scrolling through the files, nodding that they already know he survived the explosion. But for now, they only have information on his activities under the name Riot. He realizes they've already made the connection between him and the Brown Trading Company. That's why they framed his associates as cultists. They need leverage to force him out of the shadows. Seeing Haste's face just fuels his fire. He knows exactly what kind of monster he's dealing with. He keeps digging until he finds exactly what he's looking for: Haste's classified records. Information starts flooding the screen as he dives deep into the man's history. This is the legendary Sword Star, the hero the entire kingdom looks up to. Riot's eyes sharpen as he prepares to tear that legend down piece by piece. He looks back 25 years to when the kingdom was being crushed by the Ukland Empire. The streets were a mess of fire and destruction, with bodies littered everywhere. A young Haste sits in the middle of the carnage, sobbing over his mother's body. A soldier walks up and just boots the kid across the dirt like he's garbage. The boy looks up at the man, tears streaming down his face, and promises to kill him. Even as a kid, he had this terrifying look in his eyes that didn't belong on a child. The soldier actually flinches, unsettled by the raw hatred coming from the brat. His partner tells him to knock it off, since there might still be enemy soldiers nearby. But the guy doesn't care. He's convinced every coward in the city has already run away. He grabs the kid by his clothes and hauls him up, ready to take his anger out on him. He screams in the boy's face, blaming him and his people for every friend he lost in the war. The soldier's grief twists into a blind rage as he screams that his son would still be alive if the kingdom didn't exist. Looking at the terrified kid, the man's eyes are filled with nothing but pure, unfiltered hatred. Even as the soldier towers over him, the young Haste doesn't back down, hissing a promise to kill him. The man just scoffs and boots the boy aside like he's nothing but trash in the way. He draws a torch, fully intent on burning the boy and the rest of the survivors alive to satisfy his grudge. The man lets out a maniacal laugh, enjoying the terror on the faces of the people he's about to destroy. But before he can strike, a blade slices through the air, cutting him down in an instant. The other soldiers can only watch in shock as their comrade is silenced mid-laugh. The boy collapses to the ground, gasping for breath as his potential executioner lies dead nearby. Another soldier screams out in a panic, unable to believe someone actually stood up to them. A mysterious swordsman in a dark coat moves through the chaos like a ghost, taking down anyone in his path. He stands over the fallen soldier, his expression cold and unimpressed by the man's pathetic excuses. He looks at the carnage and notes that bullying the weak isn't justice, it's just cowardice. The surviving soldier can only stammer in fear, recognizing the sheer power of the man before him. With a single precise strike, the stranger finishes off the remaining threats in the village. The boy groans in pain, his body battered and his vision starting to fade. The swordsman picks him up, offering a rare moment of compassion as he apologizes for being too late. He pulls out a high-grade potion and tells the kid to drink it if he wants to live. Haste stares at the medicine, his injured eye bleeding and his spirit nearly broken. The man gently checks the boy's wounds, worried that his eyesight might be permanently damaged. Just then, a group of knights from the royal army arrives on the scene, shouting for everyone to halt. The stranger doesn't even look back as he tells the knights they're in charge of the situation now. He hands the boy over to them, insisting that they get him to a doctor immediately. The knight commander gives a firm nod, promising to take care of the survivor. Haste watches the man walk away, wondering who his savior actually was. The knights explain that the person who saved him was none other than the legendary hero of the kingdom. The boy's golden eye glows with a new purpose as he burns that man's image into his memory. Years later, that same orphan was adopted into the noble Hossaman family. By the age of 13, he had already joined the Knight Order and was making a name for himself. He traveled across the entire continent, achieving legendary feats on every front line he visited. At 25, he was officially nominated to take over as the new Sword Star. Back in the present, Riot scrolls through an old interview transcript from a year ago. The interviewer asks Haste what his dream is, now that he's considered the strongest. The woman smiles, thinking it must be something grand for a symbol of justice like him. Haste looks away, his expression darkening as he says the title of strongest doesn't fit him yet. He claims that if a war broke out right now, he wouldn't have the power to stop it on his own. He knows there was someone in the past who actually could have done the impossible, a person who possessed the miraculous power to make any dream a reality. Riot stops reading, wondering who this legendary figure could possibly be. The name on the record is Riot Berger, the man Haste is so obsessed with. Haste views him as the ultimate hero, who single-handedly ended the Continental War. His true dream is to surpass the legend of the past and become the most powerful existence to ever live. Haste sits alone in the dim light of a tent, his mind heavy with the weight of his dark ambitions. Dan sticks his head through the flap, asking if it's finally time to begin the public proceedings. With a cold, resolute gaze, Haste gives his simple order to proceed. Dan's face splits into a wicked, toothy grin as he happily accepts the command. He trots out toward the square, where a restless crowd has already gathered. Haste watches the masses from afar, his thoughts still lingering on the hero he spent a quarter-century trying to emulate. He thinks with disdain of Riot Berger, the man who chose to discard his strength only to end up a shadow of his former self. Clenching his fist, Haste vows that he will never let himself be weakened by sentiment or time. His goal is to obtain a level of power so absolute that it can crush any injustice or absurdity in his path. He is prepared to sacrifice anything and anyone to achieve his version of true strength. Stepping out from the tent, Haste prepares to oversee the public demonstration of his authority. Dan stands triumphantly on the execution platform, presenting the bound prisoners to the jeering crowd. Leto Brown hangs his head in silence, the weight of the false accusations pressing down on him. Huna remains defiant even with a rope around her neck, her eyes burning with unspoken fury. Dan's voice booms across the plaza as he announces that the execution of the cultists will now commence. High above the square, a silent figure observes the entire scene from the shadows of a rooftop. Riot watches the executioners with a frigid intensity, his icy blue eyes betraying none of the cold rage he feels inside.